Chapter 1179. Gu Qingze felt a chill run down his back. He quickly shook his head and threw this absurd thought to the back of his head. This was impossible. Chen Ning was the Empress, how could she be the lover of this brat Chu Xiaobai? This was definitely impossible. Chen Ning sat down in front of the bed. Seeing Chu Xiaobai's pale face, her heart turned sour and her eyes turned red. The first time she saw him, he was in high spirits and had a spring-like smile. He was like a completely different person now. Now that he was this pale and haggard, with a narrow escape, it was all because of her. She owed him too much and she didn't know if she would ever have the chance to repay him in this lifetime. Xiaobai, you've done very well, you really kept your promise. When I left, you promised me that you would wait for me to come back and you really did it. You know, I invited the world's #1 divine doctor to treat your illness, so you will definitely get better. You've done the first thing you promised me, but you haven't done the second thing you promised me. I want to wait for you to completely recover and then I'll finish that thing. You're a man, so you should keep your promise. You can't not do what you promised me. Otherwise, I'll be angry with you and never talk to you again. When she said this, Gu Qingze suddenly looked up with a look of joy on his face. The patient's pulse is becoming stronger and stronger. Chen Ning, feed him some porridge in a bit. This stinky brat, his stomach clearly doesn't have any problems, but no matter what I feed him, he will spit it out. He's clearly going against me. All right. Chen Ning nodded and revealed a faint smile on her face. She also found that after she spoke to Chu Xiaobai, his pale white face seemed to have a bit of red. Xiaoru, go make some porridge. The lotus-fragrant rice porridge you made last time was very tasty. Is it really tasty? Young miss, you and the divine Dr. Gu must be hungry. The servant will go make some more porridge. Xiaoru happily walked out. When she opened the door, she almost bumped into a person. Zhui Feng, what are you standing here for? Don't you know that a good dog doesn't block the way? She looked over and was filled with anger. The thin bamboo pole-like person standing at the door, if it wasn't Zhui Feng, who else could it be? Zhui Feng felt very innocent. He was just standing there without moving, but he was being called a dog again. But he remembered what Xiaoxi said before. He should never reason with a woman. So he silently retreated to the side. He didn't say anything to defend himself and let Xiaoru pass by him. In the room, Gu Qingze couldn't help asking, Chen Ning, what did you promise to do with this stinky brat? This matter can only be done by him, can it be done by others? Chen Ning nodded and raised her voice as she said, that's right, only Xiaobai can help me. Xiaobai, you have to wake up, do you understand? Gu Qingze was a little depressed and muttered, I don't see where this kid is stronger than me. If he can do it, I can do it too. Chapter 1180. Gu Qingze almost spat out the rice. He stared at Chen Ning, not knowing if he wanted to laugh or be angry. This mischievous girl, she was actually playing tricks on a half-dead person. What kind of person was she? Was it wrong for him to accept her as his disciple? She was full of schemes, who knew if this girl would even play tricks on her master in the future. Gu Qingze felt a headache coming on. Not long after, Xiaoru came in with 3 bowls of steaming hot porridge. Chen Ning picked up a bowl of porridge and blew on it to cool it down. Then she scooped up a small spoonful and placed it in front of Chu Xiaobai's lips. Don't feed him too much, he hasn't eaten in a long time and his stomach is empty. If he eats too much, it will be bad for his body, so just feed him a few mouthfuls. Gu Qingze said. All right. Chen Ning carefully fed the porridge into Chu Xiaobai's mouth and was pleasantly surprised to find that he actually began to swallow. His throat moved and he slowly swallowed that mouthful of porridge. Very good, keep feeding him. Gu Qingze said again, but he was thinking in his heart. This stinky brat, when a beautiful girl fed him porridge, he couldn't wait to eat it. I fed him porridge but he spat it all out, pay. Chen Ning slowly fed him a few more spoonfuls. Chu Xiaobai swallowed it all and he didn't show any signs of vomiting after a while. Alright, let him rest for a while. In another hour, I will give him acupuncture. At that time, you will watch from the side and I will begin to teach you acupuncture techniques. Gu Qingze picked up the bowl of porridge and ate 3 large bowls with the side dishes. Only then did he put down his chopsticks in satisfaction. He sat back in his wheelchair and patted his stomach. After Chen Ning finished the bowl of porridge, she revealed a faint smile to Xiaoru and said, Xiaoru, is there more porridge? There's still a lot. Young miss, I'll help you get more. Xiaoru's smile turned into crescents. She saw that the things she made were so popular, she was happier than eating 10 bowls of porridge in a row. I'm already full. Xiaoru, you haven't eaten yet, right? Quickly go eat something. That's right, Zhui Feng hasn't eaten yet either. If there's more porridge, give Zhui Feng a few bowls. Look at how thin he is, he'll be blown away by the wind. Qin Ning revealed a smile as she looked out the door. She saw Zhui Feng's tall and thin figure standing outside. His eyes were staring at the porridge in Xiao Ru's hands. His throat was moving up and down, clearly he was hungry. She knew that Xiao Ru was angry with Zhui Feng, so she deliberately made Zhui Feng look very pitiful, wanting to arouse Xiao Ru's sympathy. Who would have thought that Xiao Ru's anger towards Zhui Feng had not disappeared? She hatefully said, "Being blown away by the wind is better. Being blown to someone else's house is better than being stuck at the door like a dog blocking the road." Ning. Out he would Jafeng. She Ning she tu she feng she feng she. After a while she came out of the kitchen with a bowl full of porridge and walked over to Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng's stomach was already rumbling with hunger. When he saw Qin Ning and Gu Qingze eating porridge, it was unknown how much saliva he swallowed. But because of his pride as a man, he couldn't ask Xiao Ru, the stupid girl he looked down on, for a mouthful of porridge. At this time he saw Xiao Ru come over with the fragrant porridge. His eyes couldn't help lighting up and he reached out to receive the porridge. "Miss Xiao Ru, many thanks." Chapter 1181. This was because Xiao Ru directly threw the porridge on the ground and stomped her foot as she said, "Humph, the porridge I made, I'd rather feed it to the dogs than give it to those people who don't know what's good for them." After Xiao Ru said this, she turned to leave. Zhui Feng's face instantly turned red like he had been slapped by Xiao Ru. He was very embarrassed and wanted to dig a hole in the ground for him to hide in. He took back his hand and forcefully clenched it into a fist. Then he stared at Xiao Ru's back. While he was embarrassed, he couldn't help feeling angry. Wasn't it just a bowl of porridge? What was so special about it? That stupid girl actually treated it like a treasure, not willing to give it to him. Humph, she would rather feed it to the dogs than him. Was he not even comparable to a dog in her eyes? Zhui Feng's heart felt very uncomfortable. Qin Ning saw this scene and she couldn't help secretly shaking her head. Zhui Feng really was a blockhead. He had ignored Xiao Ru for the past few days and had offended Xiao Ru. Did he not know that women could not be offended? It was estimated that Xiao Ru would remember him for a lifetime and be angry with him for a lifetime. Perhaps Zhui Feng would never have a chance to personally eat Xiao Ru's porridge. Xiao Ru brought out another bowl of porridge from the kitchen. This was what she had prepared for Xiao Si. This time Zhui Feng did not even look at her. His eyes looked at his nose looked at his heart, and his eyes did not move. However, after smelling the aroma of the porridge, his stomach failed to live up to his expectations and growled. "Gululu, gululu." In an instant Zhui Feng's face turned red to his ears and he was so embarrassed that he wanted to hide in a hole. He looked down and stared at his shoes. He forcefully pressed down on his stomach and said in his heart, "You're not allowed to cry out. You're not allowed to cry out. This is simply too shameful." Who would have thought that the harder he pressed down, the louder his stomach would cry out? It was like it was purposely going against him. Although Zhui Feng did not look up, he could see Xiao Ru's mocking eyes looking at him. He felt ashamed and immediately activated his qinggong. He jumped onto the roof and disappeared from everyone's sight like a breeze. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Ru held the bowl of porridge. Seeing Zhui Feng's sorry appearance, she couldn't help holding her stomach as she laughed. She bent over and the bowl of porridge in her hand fell to the ground, spilling the porridge all over the ground. Interesting, very interesting. Stupid blockhead, you want to eat the porridge I cook but you can't. You're going to starve to death, you're going to die of hunger. She felt that the anger from Zhui Feng had been swept away and her mood became incomparably carefree. However, this happy mood of hers instantly turned to disappointment when she couldn't find Xiao Si. "Dr. Zhang, do you know where Xiao Si went?" She couldn't help waking up Dr. Zhang, who was sleeping soundly in the room. Dr. Zhang drowsily waved his hand. "Where did these mosquitoes come from? Don't disturb my old man's sleep." He turned over and continued to sleep soundly. After not having a good rest for over 10 days, the #1 divine doctor in the world finally came to save Chu Xiaobai from danger. Dr. Zhang's old heart finally fell back into his stomach and he could finally have a good sleep. Right now, even thunder wouldn't wake him up. Xiao Ru called out to him a few more times, but Dr. Zhang didn't hear her. His snoring became louder and louder. She had no choice but to withdraw from the door. She sat on the steps in a daze and stared at the courtyard door. If she couldn't find Xiao Si, he must have returned to the emperor's side. Chapter 1182. Inside the room, Qin Ning did not notice Xiao Ru's dazed expression. She took out the 5 repeating crossbow blueprint from her chest. "Master, I have something I want to ask you." Gu Qingze saw the blueprint in her hand and his eyes lit up. He said, "What kind of medical book is this? Let me have a look." On the way back to the capital, Ning had memorized all the medical books he wanted and gave them to him. Each one made him feel enlightened, and it could be said that he had benefited a lot. But he knew that Ning's mind must have some good things that he had not read yet. He took the blueprint and glanced at it. He knew that it was not the medical book he was hoping for. He couldn't help feeling disappointed and threw it back to Ning without any interest. "What kind of broken thing is this?" he said in a bad mood. "Master, can you understand this blueprint?" Ning did not get angry and asked with a smile. "Do you think your master is an idiot that doesn't understand anything?" Gu Qingze said in a displeased voice. "Isn't it just a blueprint for a 5-repeating crossbow? It's nothing special, it's not something rare." Ning's eyes flashed with interest. "Master, are you saying that you can also make this 5-repeating crossbow?" Gu Qingze lazily leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He gave a non-committal sound. Ning felt this was very strange. She had heard from Mo Chuan that this 5-repeating crossbow was a secret of Northern Qi, so she never would have thought that Gu Qingze would know how to make it. She knew that although Gu Qingze was a strange and arrogant person, he was a man of his word and never lied. If he said he could make it, then he could make it. If she knew this earlier, she would not have been in such a rush to make a deal with the Northern Qi envoy. She could have saved a large amount of money for the West Chu treasury. Gu Qingze closed his eyes and said unhurriedly, "If you want me to help you make the thing on this blueprint, it's not impossible. Take out an ancient medical book that I haven't read and I'll make you a quintuple crossbow. I guarantee it'll be even more exquisite and nimble than the one on this blueprint." Ning's eyes lit up. "If Master doesn't care about it, then I don't care about it either. It's just a 5-repeating crossbow, it really isn't anything special. Master, I want a 10-repeating crossbow. If you can make it for me, I'll give you 3 medical books." 3 units? Gu Qingze suddenly opened his eyes and straightened up from his chair. "Are you serious?" "It's completely true." Ning solemnly nodded. "You said you want 10 repeating crossbows?" Gu Qingze looked at her thoughtfully. "Master, can you make it?" She didn't answer his question but instead asked him a question, her eyes shining brightly. Gu Qingze answered without hesitation, "I can't do it. As far as I know, no one in this world has ever been able to make 10 repeating crossbows. Even the best weaponsmiths in Northern Qi can only make 8. Ning was not disappointed. She smiled and said, "Then Master, if I had the 10 crossbow blueprints, would you be able to make it?" "Ning, you said you have the blueprint for a 10-shot crossbow?" Gu Qingze's face, which had always been as calm and composed as an ancient well without ripples, finally showed an expression of surprise. For the first time, his eyes revealed the light of excitement. Gu Qingze's calm face finally revealed a shocked expression. Even the most famous master in Northern Qi admired him. Bystanders all said that his medical skills were unparalleled, but no one knew that his skill in the art of hidden weapons was also unparalleled. Even the most famous craftsmen in Northern Qi admired him greatly. Chapter 1183. As the saying goes, if you don't go crazy you won't survive. It was because Gu Qingze was obsessed with this that he easily fell into the trap that Ning had designed for him. "All right." Ning was waiting for him to say this. She pursed her lips and walked over to the desk to the side, laying down a piece of white paper. She was still not used to the soft brush, so she had Xiao Ru bring in a piece of charcoal from the kitchen. She drew on the white paper and began to sketch the Zhuge repeating crossbow's blueprint. Although it was just a sketch and each part only had a few simple strokes, in the eyes of a great expert like Gu Qingze, the production principle was clear at a glance. He stared at Ning's drawing without blinking. His eyes revealed a look of fanaticism and joy as he pondered over it. "Woo, so it's like this. Not bad, not bad. This is a clever idea, completely unconventional." He sometimes nodded and sometimes shook his head. When Ning finished drawing the Zhuge repeating crossbow's blueprint, he carefully looked at it in his hand. After a while he put it down. "The idea is good, but it's a pity it's too clumsy. Using this method to make a 10 repeating crossbow, it requires at least 2 or 3 people to use it. It can't be used by one person at all, so on the battlefield it's just trash. It's flashy but not practical." When Ning heard this, her eyes began to shine even brighter. This was because Gu Qingze had only looked at the blueprint a few times and was able to immediately point out the drawbacks of the Zhuge repeating crossbow. This was already not a normal master's level. "You're right, this 10 repeating crossbow is indeed clumsy, but Master, you can improve it, right?" She smiled as she suggested. Gu Qingze was enlightened as he suddenly slapped his thigh and shouted, "That's right, I can improve it." But then he became a little dispirited, "But making a 10 repeating crossbow is not that interesting. Northern Chi's Chi Yinyu can already make 8 repeating crossbows, so even if I make a 10 repeating crossbow, I won't be any better than him. It's not worth my effort to improve this thing. Chi Yinyu? Qin Ning said in a curious voice. This was the first time she had heard this name. Who is he? You don't even know Chi Yinyu? Then where did this 10 repeating crossbow blueprint come from? Was it not given to you by Chi Yinyu? Gu Qingzi said in a surprised voice. Of course not, I accidentally wrote down this blueprint in an ancient book. It has nothing to do with the Chi Yinyu you speak of. Master, is this Chi Yinyu the master that invented and made the 5 repeating crossbow? Gu Qingzi had a strange expression. He could not think that other than Chi Yinyu, there was another person in this world that had invented the 10 repeating crossbow. He composed himself and said, that's right. He's the one who made the quintuple repeating crossbow, and I've heard that he recently made the octuple repeating crossbow. He's the greatest weaponsmith in Northern Qi as well as the entire continent. There's almost no one who doesn't know his name. You're ignorant and inexperienced, so it's not surprising that you don't know his name. Amazing. Qin Ning stuck out her tongue and giggled as she said, Master, you said that he's the most amazing production master, but is he better than Master? Qin. I don't believe it. He is an expert in making weapons and I am an expert in hidden weapons. We both have our specialties and are evenly matched. Gu Qingzi's face turned cold. Zai Zi looking at Gu Qingzi's stinky face, there must be a story behind this. Chapter 1184. But Qin Ning never thought that Gu Qingzi would not have any interest in the improved 10 repeating crossbow. She lowered her head and thought about it. Then she suddenly looked up and said, I also know of a crossbow blueprint that can shoot 50 arrows at once. It's incomparably powerful, but it's a pity that the blueprint is incomplete and the method to make it has already been lost. 5. 50 repeating crossbows. This time Gu Qingzi was truly shocked. His eyes opened wide in disbelief as he stared at Qin Ning without blinking. There's actually this kind of magical forging technique in this world? I don't believe it. Quickly draw the blueprint for me to see. He impatiently urged her. Ever since Qin Ning met him, this was the first time she had seen him this agitated. But master, that blueprint is incomplete. Even if I draw it, I can't make it. She deliberately spread her hands and revealed a helpless expression. Gu Qingzi stared at her. If I tell you to draw it, then draw it. If you can't make it, then can't your master make it? He could not hide the excitement in his voice. His hands on the chair began to heat up and his eyes filled with passion. 50 repeating crossbows. This was a 50 repeating crossbow. Ha ha, if he could make 50 repeating crossbows, he would step on that person and make him look up to him forever. Just thinking of this, he felt an indescribable joy in his heart. Alright, then I'll draw it now. Qin Ning pursed her lips. She picked up the charcoal pen again and began to draw the blueprint. Although Ma Jun's invention of the method to make 50 repeating crossbows had been lost for a long time, she still remembered a few pages of incomplete blueprints. Thus, she meticulously drew them according to her memory. Gu Qingzi took the blueprint and his face turned serious. He knit his brows and carefully looked at it. Qin Ning held her breath, not daring to disturb his train of thought. Because there were too many missing parts of the blueprint, there were many key parts that did not have examples. Wanting to recreate the 50 repeating crossbows with these incomplete blueprints was as hard as ascending to the heavens. The 10 arrows of the Zhuge repeating crossbow were too heavy and clumsy, so they could not be used by a single person. These 50 repeating crossbows were 5 times more than the Zhuge repeating crossbow, and the weight and volume of the arrow box were also 5 times larger. Wanting a single person to shoot 50 arrows at once was no different from a fantasy, it was an impossible task. Gu Qingzi quickly realized this point, so his brows knit even tighter. This was a problem he could not solve at all. This was a problem he could not solve. Even if he could make 50 crossbows according to this incomplete blueprint, it would be like the Zhuge repeating crossbow, flashy but impractical, and unusable. This was something that a perfect person like him could not accept. Even if the shaft is made of the lightest material, the arrowheads must be made of iron. If it's the lightest thin-bladed type, then each arrow must weigh at least 6 taels. It's impossible to reduce the weight any further. If the weight of the arrow box is added, it's impossible for one person to use it. No, I have to think of another way to reduce the weight of the arrows. Gu Qingzi was thinking while muttering to himself. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. His mind was filled with ideas, but they were all rejected by him. No, this method won't work either. Let me think about it, perhaps this will work? No, it still won't work. Chapter 1185. She turned her eyes and suddenly said, "Master, these 50 repeating crossbows are actually waste. Other than wasting arrows, it doesn't have much power at all." Gu Qing's thoughts were interrupted, but he was not angry. He turned to look at Qin Ning. "Qin girl, do you know what a 50 repeating crossbow is? It can be used to shoot 50 arrows at once, and it can be said to be invincible on the battlefield. No matter how strong the opponent is or how good their martial arts are, once they shoot it, they will be turned into a hedgehog." Qin Ning smiled and said, "But it really is flashy. Can these 50 arrows all hit the target at once? When they are shot, won't they hit each other? So I said that even if we make 50 crossbows, it will still be a flashy product. How about we reduce it to 20 arrows? This way we can guarantee the power and make the crossbow a bit lighter. What do you think, master?" It was like Gu Qing's fog had been lifted and his eyes suddenly lit up. He heavily slapped his thigh again and shouted, "Not bad, not bad. Qin girl, your mind is really flexible. Why didn't your master think of this? 20 repeating crossbows are the most exquisite and powerful crossbows." As soon as his voice fell, he added, "Wu, even if you didn't say it, your master would have thought of it." Qin Ning couldn't help wanting to laugh. She turned her head, not letting Gu Qing's see the smile on her face. Men, they were all proud animals that cared about face. Even someone as proud as Gu Qing's was not an exception. If it was only 20 arrows, then it would be much easier. I can add a box on each side of the crossbow and use bamboo as the shaft, the most refined iron as the arrowhead, and the feathers from a pigeon's tail, since pigeon feathers are the lightest and most stable. As for the crossbow, using iron and copper is the strongest, but it will increase its weight. That's right, I can use iron and bamboo. And this method is feasible, it's very feasible." Gu Qingze said this while looking up and closing his eyes to the sky. He began to imagine the process of making the 20 repeating crossbows in his mind. He felt like his mind was filled with inspiration like a spring, never ending. There was no lack of inspiration from the 5 repeating crossbows and the Zhuge repeating crossbows. He knew that this chance of inspiration would disappear, so he had to strike while the iron was hot. He had to think of all the advantages and disadvantages of these 20 repeating crossbows, making it into an incomparably powerful single-bow crossbow. Qin Ning saw Gu Qing's expression and knew that he was thinking at the most critical moment, so she did not dare disturb him. She went out to bring a basin of hot water and a soft towel, gently wiping Chu Xiaobai's face. Chu Xiaobai's eyes slightly trembled. Qin Ning's heart skipped a beat. She held her breath as she looked at him without blinking and whispered in his ear, "Xiaobai." Now that his pulse was stable and strong, even someone like her who didn't know how to take a pulse could feel it. She knew that Chu Xiaobai would get better and wake up, it was just a matter of time. But as long as he didn't wake up and regain consciousness, she couldn't be at ease. Hearing her call, Chu Xiaobai's eyelashes began to tremble again, just like the wings of a butterfly. Moreover, they kept moving as if they could open their eyes at any time. Chapter 1186. Xiaobai, was he finally going to wake up? Qin Ning found it hard to breathe and her eyes couldn't help filling with tears. She softly called out, "Xiaobai." Her voice was a bit choked up. Chu Xiaobai's brows slowly knit together and his face revealed a look of pain. He wanted to turn his head but he couldn't move at all. He slightly opened his lips and let out a vague painful murmur. Seeing this, even if Qin Ning didn't understand medicine, she knew that Chu Xiaobai was about to wake up. She was filled with joy and immediately wanted to call out to Gu Qingze. But when she turned around, she found that Gu Qingze was facing the sky and muttering to himself. She knew that he was at a critical point and if she interrupted his train of thought at this time, it was very likely that all his efforts would be wasted. Xiaoru quickly called Dr. Zhang over. "Tell him that King Xiaobai is about to wake up." Qin Ning quickly walked out of the room and woke up Xiaoru, who was sitting on the steps in a daze. "Really?" Xiaoru suddenly jumped up and shouted, "I'll go immediately." She quickly charged into Dr. Zhang's room. Dr. Zhang, quickly wake up. My family's young miss said that King Jing'an is about to wake up." Xiaoru forcefully shook Dr. Zhang's shoulder as she loudly shouted. Dr. Zhang was sleeping soundly. Hearing this, he couldn't help raising his beard and laughing as he said, "Is this old man dreaming? It seems like someone said that King Jing'an is about to wake up. Ooh, this dream is really good, this old man will continue dreaming." He turned over and continued to sleep soundly. Xiaoru anxiously stomped her feet and grabbed his beard, loudly saying, "Dr. Zhang, you're not dreaming, King Jing'an is about to wake up. My family's young miss wants you to immediately go and see." So painful. Dr. Zhang felt a sharp pain in his beard and finally woke up from his dream. He saw Xiaoru grabbing his beard and angrily said, "You little girl, why are you pulling this old man's beard while I'm asleep? Don't you know that this old man only has a bit of beard left? Every strand you pull off is one less. Little girl, you're not allowed to pull this old man's beard again." Xiaoru stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, "How could this servant dare pull an old man's beard again? It's King Jingyan who is about to wake up, so my family's young miss is asking you to come over." King Jingyan is about to wake up? This fast? Dr. Zhang's brows and beard moved as his face filled with joy. He jumped up from the bed and didn't even bother putting on his shoes as he ran barefoot towards Chu Xiaofang's room. He arrived in front of the bed and saw Chu Xiaobai lying on the bed. His brows were tightly knit and the corner of his mouth was twitching. He was muttering a few words with a painful expression, like he was struggling with something. "Dr. Zhang, quickly take a look. Xiaobai is he going to wake up?" Chen Ning's voice was filled with joy. She used her hand to cover her lips as she was filled with excitement. Her eyes were filled with tears. Dr. Zhang took Chu Xiaobai's pulse and revealed a smile. He said to Chen Ning, "Not bad, King Jingyan is indeed about to wake up." Xiaobai to Chen. To say he, Ru Shado say, to Xiao to say I to say T to say I to I, T I and shat I shat. If Chu Xiaobai could really wake up and regain consciousness, this would simply be an unprecedented miracle in the history of medicine. This impossible miracle was happening right in front of his eyes. Although he did not personally participate, he had helped the divine doctor from the side, putting in quite a bit of effort. Chapter 1187. Chen Ning's heart was beating fast with excitement. She stared at Chu Xiaobai without blinking as she silently said in her heart, "Xiaobai, God bless you. You have to wake up, you have to wake up." Dr. Zhang was even more nervous. He kept taking Chu Xiaobai's pulse and his palms kept sweating. Xiaoru stood on the side with an excited expression, not daring to say anything or ask anything. But after a while, Chu Xiaobai still did not open his eyes. His trembling eyelashes slowly calmed down as if he had fallen back into a deep sleep. Why is it like this? Wasn't he about to wake up just now? Dr. Zhang's face was filled with disappointment and his heart was in his throat. He knew that there were many patients who had been unconscious for many days. If they showed signs of waking up, if they didn't wake up the first time, they would never wake up again. He was worried that Chu Xiaobai would be in a similar situation. "Dr. Zhang, Xiaobai What's wrong?" Chen Ning knit her brows. Seeing Chu Xiaobai's calm expression, she had a bad feeling. Dr. Zhang shook his head. He didn't know if he should tell Chen Ning what he knew or not. He was hesitating, not knowing what to do when he suddenly heard a strict voice from behind him. "Why didn't you call me earlier? We missed the time when the patient was most likely to wake up." Gu Qingze walked over with large steps and pulled Dr. Zhang to the side. He placed his finger on Chu Xiaobai's pulse. "Little girl Chen, write down the prescription." Gu Qingze quickly let go. His face was still as calm as before, making it hard for people to see through him. Dr. Zhang couldn't help asking, "Divine Dr. Gu, can King Jingyan wake up?" Gu Qingze rolled his eyes and snappily said, "If he just stood there blowing air out of his nostrils and didn't do anything, he wouldn't wake up for the rest of his life." Dr. Zhang's old face turned red from embarrassment, but he was not angry at Gu Qingze at all. Rather, he felt that the divine doctor was right. He had been a doctor for several decades, but he only knew how to stand there in a daze and not do anything to save the patient. This was his fault no matter what. Gu Qingze quickly recited a prescription and Chen Ning wrote it down. "Old man, quickly take the medicine and bring it over. I'm going to help the patient with the acupuncture needles." Little girl Chen, carefully watch from the side. Gu Qingze said. Dr. Zhang took the prescription from Chen Ning's hands and immediately went to the medicine room on the side. Although he was eager to stay and watch Gu Qingze perform acupuncture, because it would definitely benefit him a lot, he did not dare to disobey Gu Qingze's orders. Not to mention that other than him, no one else could benefit from this. Gu Qingze's prescription even had a very detailed decoction process, which was very different from what he had learned before. Dr. Zhang knew that although he had only been with Gu Qingze for 2 days and 1 night, he had already obtained many benefits. It was something he could never learn in his lifetime. He was very envious of Chen Ning, actually having this kind of good luck to be accepted as a disciple by the ancient divine doctor. He sighed that he was born several decades earlier. In the room, Gu Qingze began to apply the needles on Chu Xiaobai while explaining to Chen Ning the effects of each needle, how much strength he used, and how much it penetrated into the flesh. He also taught her the acupuncture techniques without hiding anything. Chapter 1188. Chen Ning was completely focused on Gu Qing's acupuncture technique. She memorized every single word he said in her heart. Although she didn't understand these words right now, once her medical skills improved, these would be very valuable experiences and summaries. She was secretly grateful to Gu Qingze. She had schemed against him before, but not only was he not angry at her, he even accepted her as his disciple and taught her all his medical skills. If she didn't study hard, she would be letting him down. Not long after, Gu Qingze finished applying the needles and Dr. Zhang's medicine was sent in. Chen Ning did not wait for Gu Qingze's orders as she took the bowl of medicine. She blew on the medicine and fed it to Chu Xiaobai. Not long after taking the medicine, Chu Xiaobai had a reaction again. His hands by his side slowly clenched into fists and his brows knit together again. His eyelashes kept trembling like he was desperately struggling. This stinky brat, he can clearly wake up, but his subconscious doesn't want to wake up. Humph, if you don't want to wake up, I'll make you wake up. Gu Qingze gave a snort and said to Chen Ning, "Little girl Chen, he has the most reaction to your words, continue calling his name." Chen Ning nodded and said in a soft voice, "Xiaobai, do you still want to keep sleeping? Do you really not want to open your eyes and look at me?" Then she saw Chu Xiaobai's clenched right hand slowly open like he wanted to grab something. So she reached out and grabbed his right hand. Chu Xiaobai's fingers trembled. His palm was hot, but his fingers were ice cold. The struggle on his face became even stronger. "Stinky brat, wake up for me." In the blink of an eye, Gu Qingze suddenly made a move and a shining golden needle pierced into the center of Chu Xiaobai's head. The struggling expression on Chu Xiaobai's face instantly calmed down. His brows relaxed and he let out a long sigh. His expression became incomparably relaxed, like he had been woken up from a long sleep, but he still did not open his eyes. "Little girl Chen, count to 3 and make him open his eyes." Gu Qingze pulled out the golden needle and gently said. He stared at Chu Xiaobai. This was the first time he had met such a stubborn patient. He could clearly wake up, but he was not willing to wake up. But he had a weapon in his hand to wake this brat up, which was his good disciple. He found that Chu Xiaobai could not resist Chen Ning's call at all. He could not wake him up, but Chen Ning could. "Xiaobai, I know you can hear me and you know I'm by your side. I will count to 3 and when I count to 3, you will open your eyes and look at me, alright?" Chen Ning looked at Chu Xiaobai's calm face and said in a clear voice. 1. She clearly said. She said a number. Chen. Dr. Zhang and Xiao Ru's eyes were wide open as they looked at Chu Xiaobai without blinking. The two of them seemed to feel something. It was like when Chen Ning said the last number, they could see Chu Xiaobai open his eyes. 3. Chen Ning finally shouted out the last number. At this time, Chu Xiaobai, who had his eyes closed the entire time, raised his eyelashes and slowly opened his eyes. Seeing this, Dr. Zhang and Xiao Ru were both shocked. Their mouths fell open and their faces were filled with disbelief. It wasn't just Dr. Zhang and Xiao Ru. What they did not notice was that the doctors from the doctor yard had all arrived at an unknown time, personally seeing Chu Xiaobai wake up. Chapter 1189. It was unknown when Zhui Feng had appeared outside the door. Seeing Chu Xiaobai finally open his eyes, his originally expressionless face could not help revealing a look of excitement. He reached out a large palm and fiercely wiped his eyes. After taking a deep look at Chu Xiaobai, he turned around and left. King Jing'an had finally woken up. This was good news. He had to immediately report it to the emperor. In the room, Chen Ning couldn't help crying tears of joy. "Xiaobai, you're finally awake." The tears that had been in her eyes for a long time finally fell down, but they were tears of joy. Although Chu Xiaobai had opened his eyes, he was not completely awake yet. His eyes that were brighter than the stars in the sky were a bit hazy. When he heard Chen Ning's voice, his eyes slightly turned and he looked in Chen Ning's direction. Seeing this, Gu Qingze couldn't help muttering, "Stinky brat." As soon as he opened his eyes, he wanted to see beautiful girls, but he did not even cast a glance at the doctor who had exhausted all his efforts to save him from the gates of hell. Chu Xiaobai's eyes fell onto Chen Ning's face, but his eyes were still hazy. His brows were slightly knit, like he did not recognize her. "Xiaobai, I'm here," Chen Ning said in a soft voice. Her eyes that were as gentle as water looked at him and her smile was like a flower. Chu Xiaobai's eyes slightly opened. He struggled to raise his right hand but it quickly fell back down. "Ning, your poison has been cured?" His lips slightly opened and he spat out a few unclear words. Although it was just a few short words, It seemed like he had used all his strength and his forehead was covered in sweat. The people present did not hear what he said, but Chen Ning could guess what he was saying. Her heart suddenly trembled and her tears couldn't stop falling. Chu Xiaobai had just come back from the gates of hell, but the first thing he did was think about her poison. It could be seen just how important she was in his heart. Gu Qingze looked at Chen Ning with a thoughtful expression, but he did not say a word. Xiaobai, my poison has been cured. It's all thanks to the snow ginseng soup you gave me that my poison has been cured. I'm very good now, so you have to get better too, do you understand? She wiped her tears and continued to smile at him. But it seemed like Chu Xiaobai did not hear her at all. After saying this one sentence, he slowly closed his eyes. His face was calm like he had fallen asleep. Xiaobai, did you hear what I said? Xiaobai? Xiaobai. Chu Xiaoyang quietly closed his eyes and did not move at all. This time he did not respond to her call at all. Chen Ning's heart jumped into her throat. She immediately looked up at Gu Qingze and asked in a trembling voice, Master, quickly look at Xiaobai, what's wrong with him? Could it be? Her words were stuck in her throat. Dr. Zhang's face turned ashen from shock. He quickly went to take Chu Xiaobai's pulse and then looked up with a strange expression on his face. Xiao 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 xiao. Xiao Xiaobai shook his head with a look of disbelief, but he did not say a word. With Gu Qingze here, he did not dare casually make a judgment. He did not even believe his own judgment. Divine Dr. Gu, why don't you take his pulse? He respectfully said to Gu Qingze. Chapter 1190. Chen Ning understood his meaning when she heard this, and her heart that was stuck in her throat finally fell down. She said with a smile, Is Master worried that I'll go back on my word? Since I've called you Master, you will be my Chen Ning's master for a lifetime. Gu Qingze revealed a faint smile and said, I've finally done what I promised you. This brat won't die and he has already woken up once, so his consciousness can be considered clear, so there won't be any major problems. However, the sword in his chest was too deep and he lost too much blood, making his body very weak. He's really asleep now. Sleep is the best way for him to rest and recover. Once he's had enough sleep, he'll naturally wake up again. However, he'll probably sleep for a long time this time. Let's all go out and let him have a good sleep. He sat back in his chair and gently pushed the armrest, causing the chair to slowly slide out the door. Everyone quietly left the room, not making a single sound. Chen Ning was the last to leave. Before she left, she covered Chu Xiaobai with the blanket and looked at his sleeping face for a while. She let out a faint sigh from the bottom of her heart before turning to leave. The yard was filled with the doctors from the doctor yard. They had personally seen Chu Xiaobai go from death to life and they were all greatly shocked. They looked at Gu Qingze with eyes filled with respect and worship. No one dared to look down on him at all because of his age. Don't look at how young he was, his medical skills were very high. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he was unfathomable. Gu Qingze did not care about the gazes of worship from the doctors at all. He gave a yawn and said to Chen Ning, Little girl Chen, this master is tired. Find a quiet place for this master. This master wants to have a good sleep and don't let anyone disturb me. Dr. Zhang immediately said, There is a quiet room on the side that is where this old man usually rests. It is very quiet and very clean. If the divine Dr. Gu doesn't mind, how about you rest in that quiet room? That's fine. Gu Qingze gave a faint nod. At this time, the sunlight shined on his face and Chen Ning found that his delicate and white face was filled with fatigue. There were dark circles under his eyes and it could be seen that in these 2 days and 1 night, he had used up all his energy and did not sleep at all. He had been saving Chu Xiaobai the entire time, so his heart was filled with gratitude and guilt. He was not related to Chu Xiaobai, but he had put in all his effort to save him. She had seen it all with her own eyes. She believed that there was no doctor like Gu Qingze. Even if it was his friends or family, he would not be able to do this. But Gu Qingze had done this for Chu Xiaobai. Why did he do this? Was it just because he agreed to her condition? Was it just because he agreed to her condition? Chen Ning felt that she could not see through Gu Qingze at all. She pushed the chair and sent Gu Qingze into the quiet room. Gu Qingze turned the chair back into a couch. He quietly laid down and waved his hand at Chen Ning. Shin girl, you should also leave. He tiredly closed his eyes. Chen Ning took a thin blanket and gently covered his body. Master. Her voice was stuck in her throat and her heart was filled with endless gratitude. Chapter 1191. Chen Ning was thinking about this in her heart. She blinked and before she could say anything, she saw Gu Qingze slowly open his eyes. Although his eyes were bloodshot, they were still filled with spirit. Little girl Chen, I don't want any repayment from you. You just need to diligently study medicine with me, firmly grasp everything I teach you and use what you learn. I hope that one day you can surpass your master, and when your medical skills surpass mine, that will be the best way for you to repay me. Do you understand? Gu Qingzi said in a sincere voice. It was strange. He was only a few years older than Chen Ning, but when he said these words, his tone was filled with age, making Chen Ning unable to hold back a smile. But she pursed her lips and replied with a serious expression. Yes, master. I will definitely study hard and not ruin master's reputation. Gu Qingzi unhappily said, Am I very old? Chen Ning giggled and said, Of course you're not old. Master is still young, just like the sun at 8 or 9 in the morning. Stop flattering me. Get out, get out. This master wants to rest. Gu Qingzi had a serious expression as he kicked her out. After Chen Ning left the room, he looked in the direction she left in. His lips curled into a faint smile. It was as if taking this smart disciple was the best decision he had made in his life. Hey, he believed that with her intelligence and photographic memory, in less than a year, she would be able to learn all of his medical skills. Next, it would depend on her actual practice. As for when she would be able to achieve mastery, that would depend on her ability to comprehend. But he was confident that the person he chose would not be wrong. This bet he would definitely win it. Gu Qingzi closed his eyes and quickly fell into a deep sleep. When Chen Ning came out of Gu Qingzi's room, she saw Mo Chuan standing in the yard. His tall and straight figure was standing in front of Chu Xiaobai's window, looking through a small hole in the window. Hearing Chen Ning's footsteps, he suddenly turned around. Ning. His handsome face was filled with high spirits and his eyes could not hide the joy in them. After receiving Zhu Feng's report, he immediately put down all his government affairs and rushed over from the palace without stopping. Dr. Zhang had reported Chu Xiaobai's current situation to him, allowing the stone in his heart to fall down. His eyes fell onto Chen Ning and he found that she was wearing the clothes of a eunuch. He couldn't help being a bit surprised, but then he revealed a smile. He lovingly took off the hat on her head, revealing her dark cloud-like hair. Chen Ning looked at Chen Ning and said, Why are you this naughty girl? If you want to leave the palace, just openly leave. You are the Empress, who dares to stop you? Why are you dressed like this? Chen Ning did not have a smile on her face. She deeply looked at him and bit her lips, not saying a word. Xiaobai is finally getting better, so you should be happy. Why do you look so unhappy? Is there a change in Xiaobai's condition? Mo Chuan's heart immediately tightened. Mo Chuan's heart tightened. Chapter 1192. Mo Chuan asked, Xiaobai spoke? What did he say? Chen Ning hesitated for a bit before saying. He had just woken up and his words were unclear, so no one could hear what he said. It seemed like he used a lot of strength and after speaking he immediately fell asleep. My master said that he had lost a lot of blood from his sword wound, so he needed some time to recover. Sleeping is the best way for him to recover, so when he wakes up you can go in and see him. Let's not disturb his rest right now. Mo Chuan nodded and held her hand. He found that her fingertips were a bit cold and said, It's fine if you dress up as a eunuch to leave the palace, but why don't you wear more clothes? Chen Ning did not reply. She suddenly looked up and stared at him. Mo Chuan, I have something to say to you. She had a serious expression. Is it about Xiaobai? No, it's not. She shook her head. Mo Chuan's dark and deep eyes fell onto her face, silently not making a sound. It was like he had already guessed what she wanted to say. Dr. Zhang and the other doctors had already moved away. There were only the two of them in the courtyard now. But with Mo Chuan's cultivation, he could naturally hear the breathing of quite a few people around them. He looked around before slowly opening his mouth. If you have anything to say, you can say it after we return to the palace. Say it after we return to the palace? Will you give me a chance to speak? Mo Chuan, why did you poke my sleep acupuncture point last night? Chen Ning looked at him without blinking. She was not stupid at all. She had not finished what she wanted to say last night, so she would not fall asleep like that. It must have been Mo Chuan who had secretly poked her sleep acupuncture point, but his movements were very light and clever, so she did not notice it at all. The reason he did this was because he did not want to hear the truth from her mouth. He did not want to hear her reveal the final mystery. Mo Chuan deeply stared at her. She was like a porcupine staring back at him, not flinching at all. Ning, are you asking me why? He calmly said, You went out for this long and did not rest at all because of Xiaobai's matter. Do you think my heart wouldn't ache? I just wanted you to have a good sleep, that's all. His face was the same as usual when he spoke, without any expression. But his calm expression could fool anyone, but it could not fool Chen Ning. Whether he was telling the truth or lying, Chen Ning could already tell from the clues that were revealed on his face. She lowered her head without saying a word, and an indescribable feeling appeared in her heart. This was the first time he hadn't told her the truth since they'd met. I don't want to go back to the palace. I want to stay here and take care of Xiao Bai until he wakes up, Chen Ning quietly said. She suddenly did not want to say anything else. When she had just woken up this morning, she had felt a sense of belonging to Guan Osprey Palace. But now, she just felt that it was ridiculous because she didn't want to go back to that home at all. That was home. It was nothing but a beautifully built cage. It was cold and had no warmth, only lies. She had thought that she and Emo Chuan were honest with each other, but she never thought that there would be a day when Emo Chuan would lie to her. As for the reason why he was lying, Chen Ning was well aware. She did not want to ask because the answer would make her very disappointed. Chapter 1193. If it was like this, she might as well stay here and take care of Chu Xiaobai. Compared to Emo Chuan, Xiaobai's heart was as clear as crystal because he had never lied to her before. Emo Chuan saw the indifferent expression on her face and his heart filled with pain. He gritted his teeth and said, Ning with the ancient divine doctor here, Xiaobai will definitely get better. Come back to the palace with me, we can slowly talk about this in the palace. I don't want to go back to the palace. Chen Ning looked up and looked right into his eyes, clearly saying this. What? Emo Chuan's brows knit together and his voice became stern. The palace is your home. Ning, don't forget your identity. Chu Xiaobai does not need your care. His Majesty as a person of high status unconsciously exuded. Chen Ning couldn't help giving a cold laugh. Is the Emperor angry? People who don't know would think that the Emperor is jealous. She had never used this kind of cynical tone to talk to him before. But when she thought of his actions, she couldn't help it. Even if Chu Xiaoyang was evil beyond redemption, Emo Chuan shouldn't have used this kind of despicable method to deal with him. Emo Chuan raised his brows and grabbed her wrist. He gritted his teeth and said, That's right, I'm jealous of Chu Xiaobai. Ning, you've done too much for him, so much that even your husband is envious of him. I'm even thinking that it would be great if I was the one lying unconscious on this bed. You would personally feed me medicine and porridge. I really wish that I could be in a different place from him. These words had been suppressed in his heart for a long time. Every time he saw her look at Chu Xiaobai, there would be a poisonous snake called jealousy stirring in his heart. But he couldn't say a single word, he couldn't even show the slightest bit of jealousy. Because Chu Xiaobai's life was in danger, it was all because of her. She did all of this just to repay him. Even if he knew that her heart was with him, seeing her worry for another man, he would still feel jealous. If it wasn't for the fact that he had been provoked by her today and his mood fluctuated, he would not have said these words. Because this would make him seem too narrow-minded. But facing his feelings, he could not pretend to be magnanimous. He hoped that her gentle eyes would only be for him and he would only be for him in her heart. Emo Chuan. Chen Ning's heart violently trembled. Her eyes opened wide as she looked at him in disbelief. It was clear that she didn't believe these words had come from his mouth. The resentment and dissatisfaction she felt for him flew away and her eyes filled with tenderness. For a proud man like Emo Chuan to say these words, it could be seen just how important he was in his heart. Well, what did she care? So what if he lied to her? His heart, Emo as well as he could well. Emo Chuan's eyes flashed with a trace of passion. He turned his eyes away and did not look at her. He was already regretting saying these words. He had actually said all of his true thoughts. She would definitely look down on him and despise him. He was afraid that if he stayed a bit longer, he would do something even more spineless and say even more spineless things. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, he would do something even more spineless and say even more spineless words. Chapter 1194. Emo Chuan's footsteps stopped, but he did not turn around. I'll go back to the palace with you. Chen Ning placed her hand in his. She looked up and revealed a faint smile to him. Her smile was like a flower blooming. It was as bright as the sun, as if all the flowers in the courtyard were blooming. Emo Chuan's mood became more cheerful as her smile bloomed. We're not in a rush to go back to the palace. I'll take you to a place first. He tightly held her hand. The ice on his face melted like a spring breeze, turning into the warmth of spring. This made Zhui Feng, who was hiding in the shadows, let out a sigh of relief. Although he did not show himself, the tense atmosphere in the air made it hard for him to breathe. Chen Ning nodded with a faint smile, but she did not ask where Emo Chuan was taking her. Because wherever he went she would follow. Tai floor? When she saw the familiar restaurant in front of her, her heart filled with a warm feeling. The two of them could be said to be fated with each other because of this restaurant, so they could be considered frequent customers of Tai floor. Only ever since the two of them opened their hearts, they had never come here again. It's been a long time since I've eaten those dishes you thought of. It's rare for us to leave the palace today, so how could we miss this kind of delicacy? Emo Chuan revealed a faint smile as he pulled her hand to the door. After a few days, Tai floor had already doubled in size. They had even turned the drunken immortal house across from them into their own property. Even though it was like this, there was still a long line of customers coming to eat. When the two of them entered the door, they saw the shopkeeper behind the counter with a single glance. The shopkeeper still had an old face. When he saw Emo Chuan and Chen Ning, he couldn't help being shocked by Emo Chuan's appearance. He knew that they were honored guests and did not dare neglect them. He quickly came out from behind the counter and personally received them. Only he did not recognize that this black-clothed youth with a noble aura was a guest that he had visited several times. He did not even look at Chen Ning beside Emo Chuan. He looked over and saw that Chen Ning was wearing a eunuch uniform, so he thought that she was a eunuch from the palace. As for the young master beside her, his identity was definitely not normal. Two esteemed guests, welcome to Tai floor. It's just that our store is already full, would you like to? Before the shopkeeper could finish, Emo Chuan had already thrown a gold ingot into his chest. Third floor. After saying this, he led Chen Ning to the third floor in a familiar manner. After coming to the Tai floor a few times, he and Chen Ning knew that there was a room on the third floor that was specially used to receive guests. It was very elegant and comfortable, but this room was often empty. Dear customers, please wait a moment. Dear customers, the third floor. The private room on the third floor is currently occupied. The innkeeper hurriedly caught up from behind. Emo Chuan ignored him and threw another gold ingot into the shopkeeper's chest. This is enough, he said in a deep voice. The shopkeeper held the two heavy gold ingots and his eyes narrowed into a smile. He was very knowledgeable, so naturally he knew what Emo Chuan meant. Two guests, please wait a moment. This little one will move the guests to another room and clean the room before inviting you two in. He bowed as he spoke to Emo Chuan. Then he quickly went to the third floor. Chapter 1195. Emo Chuan tapped the tip of her nose and said with a faint smile, "That room's meaning is different. Last time it was in that room that you tricked me, did you forget?" His cold and stiff face revealed a gentle smile. At that time he had hidden his true identity and lied about being an assassin. With how smart she was, she didn't doubt it at all and even invited him to stay by her side to protect her. She didn't know that this was exactly what he wanted. Ning also remembered the scene at that time and her face turned slightly red. She angrily said, Chuan, it was clearly you who lied to me. When did I trick you? Chuan's lips curled. Before he could say anything, he suddenly heard the angry scolding of a young girl coming from upstairs. Your dog eyes are blind, actually daring to make me give up my room. Scram. Take your stinky money and scram. Following that, Chuan and Ning saw the shopkeeper roll down the stairs like a ball. Chuan reached out to push his shoulder and the shopkeeper finally stopped rolling. He climbed up from the ground, but his face was already swollen from the fall. Shopkeeper, were you beaten by someone? Ning's sharp eyes saw that there was a clear whip mark on the right side of the shopkeeper's face. It's all because this little one doesn't know how to speak and made the esteemed guest in the private room angry. It's fine, it's fine. The shopkeeper covered the wound on his face. Although it was hard to bear the pain, he had a face of forbearance. It was clear that he knew that the person in the private room on the third floor was someone he couldn't offend. He didn't want to make a big deal out of this and just wanted to keep the peace. He gave the 2 gold ingots back to Chuan with a bitter smile. 2 esteemed guests, I'm truly sorry. I'll have to ask you 2 to eat somewhere else. Chuan did not take it and his cold eyes looked in the direction of the third floor. The shopkeeper's expression was filled with fear, nervousness, and unease. He did not dare offend the person upstairs and the person in front of him was not easy to offend. He felt like his head was about to explode. Ning thought that everything was first come, first served. Chuan making the third floor people give up their room was their loss, although the other side's actions were a bit rude. She pulled on Chuan's sleeve and said in a soft voice, Let's go, they came first. Chuan gave a snort. As the emperor, he had always been able to get whatever he wanted. Today he couldn't even get a room to eat in and was even ridiculed in public. Ning gave an apologetic smile to the shopkeeper. I'm very sorry, it was our request that made the shopkeeper feel wronged. Take these 2 ingots of gold and treat them as money for your injuries. We'll come back another day. The shopkeeper let out a sigh of relief. Not caring about the pain, he had a smile on his face. The 2 honored guests understand this lowly one's difficulties. This lowly one is truly grateful. How could this lowly one dare to accept this gold? Please take it. Of the 2 of you 2. Ning nodded of Chin. Chin of. I'd like to see which filthy thief has the guts to make me give up my room. Of the the chin of king of the king exclamation point. Suddenly the crisp voice of a young girl rang out from upstairs. Then a black shadow of a whip came down like a poisonous snake. The shopkeeper covered his face and tears came out of his eyes from the pain, but he bowed to the second floor. The shopkeeper covered his face with his hands. He was in so much pain that tears were flowing out, but he bowed and apologized to the people upstairs. Chapter 1196. The shopkeeper said this while looking at Ning and Chuan, telling them to quickly leave. Ning never thought that the guest upstairs would be so arrogant. Her brows knit together and her face revealed an angry expression. At this moment, with a schwa sound, a whip shadow smashed down on Ning's head. This attack was fast and fierce, coming at a strange speed. Ning felt the wind above her head, but she did not have time to dodge it all. With this whip falling down, her skin would definitely be split open and her head would bleed. Such a ruthless woman. Chuan suddenly gave a cold shout. His right hand reached out with 2 fingers and caught the whip. Then he pulled it into his chest and the woman on the stairs felt her wrist tremble. She could no longer hold onto the whip and it flew out of her hand. How bold. Where did this dog come from, daring to steal my whip? Someone take them down for me and beat them to death. The woman's eyebrows rose as she shouted out through gritted teeth. As soon as her voice fell, several blue-clothed servants immediately charged down the stairs. Each one of them was agile and they surrounded Chuan and Ning. Even the shopkeeper was in the middle. The shopkeeper's face turned ashen and his body trembled like a sieve. He held his head with both hands and curled up into a ball. These servants were all skilled. Seeing that Chuan and Ning were only 2 people, they did not place them in their eyes at all. Although they had weapons on their waists, they did not pull them out and just charged at Chuan and Ning. The whip in Chuan's hand flew out. It was as light as a feather and it was as flexible as a snake in the air. Only with each whip, there would be a servant falling to the ground, letting out pitiful cries like a pig being slaughtered. Each whip of Chuan's was filled with internal energy. When it hit their bodies, it was so deep that their bones could be seen. Although it was not fatal, it made their hearts ache. In the blink of an eye, More than a dozen servants fell to the ground, rolling around and screaming in pain. The shopkeeper was stunned. His eyes opened wide as he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. My mother, is this black-clothed young master an immortal? Or a monster? He shouted in his heart. When the girl upstairs saw this, she was so angry that her brows knit together. She shouted in a sharp voice, "Where did this bastard come from, daring to hit my people? Do you know who I am? I am the Zhaorong princess. I am the emperor's cousin." With a put-on sound, the shopkeeper's legs turned soft and he knelt on the ground. If he knew this earlier, even if he had 120 guts, he would not have dared to ask the Zhaorong princess to give him a room. If he knew this earlier, even if he had 120 guts, he would not have dared to go. Chapter 1197. The Zhaorong princess curled her lips and walked down the stairs. She pointed at Emo Chuan and Qin Ning and arrogantly said, "Are you too deaf? Didn't you hear who this princess is? Why aren't you kneeling down and begging for mercy for this princess? If this princess is in a good mood, perhaps I'll spare your dog lives." She walked down a few steps and coldly looked at Emo Chuan and Qin Ning. Suddenly her expression changed. Her originally cold and arrogant expression suddenly froze, as if she had seen something unbelievable. Qin Ning looked over and found that it was the embroidered clothed girl she had met on the way here. The expression on her face was just as annoying as last time. She was wearing a large red embroidered robe with a golden phoenix embroidered on it. It sparkled and at first glance, it looked like a fire-red phoenix. Her expression was also as proud as a phoenix. But all of her arrogance had a large change when she saw Emo Chuan. "Biao. Cousin?" The Zhaorong princess' eyes opened wide in disbelief as she looked at Emo Chuan in a daze. Emo Chuan coldly looked at her, not saying a word and not showing any expression on his face at all. The Zhaorong princess rubbed her eyes, suspecting that her eyes were playing tricks on her. Why would the emperor's cousin appear here? But when her eyes swept over Qin Ning beside Emo Chuan, she did not notice Qin Ning's appearance at all. She only saw that she was wearing the clothes of a eunuch and confirmed that the one she was looking at was the emperor's cousin. She was surprised and happy. She didn't care about going down the stairs one step at a time. With a light leap, she landed in front of Emo Chuan. "Cousin, don't you recognize me? I'm Rong." Her hands tightly grabbed Emo Chuan's hand as she excitedly shouted in a loud voice. She was not stupid. She saw that Emo Chuan had come out of the palace incognito, so she did not call him emperor. But calling him cousin like this made it seem like she was very close to Emo Chuan. Qin Ning's eyes looked at her and then at Emo Chuan. She was thinking that Emo Chuan actually had this kind of cousin? She had never heard him mention it before. But seeing the Zhaorong princess' unruly temper, Emo Chuan probably would not like her. She did not say a word and just waited to watch the show. As expected, Emo Chuan slightly knit his brows. He let go of Zhaorong's hand and coldly looked at her. That cold gaze made most of the excitement on Zhaorong's face disappear. She shrank her neck under Emo Chuan's gaze and took a small step back. She said in a small voice, "Cousin Ronger is back. Are you not happy to see me?" Her voice had a trace of grievance in it. Her large eyes blinked as if she was about to cry. Emo Chuan said in a cold voice, "Ronger is back, are you not happy to see me?" Chuan said in a cold voice, "You come back and cause trouble, who told you to?" The Zhaorong princess pursed her lips and followed Emo Chuan's gaze. Seeing that he was looking at Qin Ning, she said with a face of disdain, "He's just a little eunuch, so what if he's injured? I'll give him a bit more money to recover, it's not like he'll die." "Rong rong rong Qin rong rong up. Long have Ru irtc, Ru Ning," she said. Rong seemed more, she seemed the more she seemed. Ning Qin rtciao. The more she spoke, the more aggrieved she became. Her eyes were filled with tears. She said, he said, and her she became more as. She is as she mo. Chapter 1198. Ning coldly watched from the side. She could already see that the way Zhao Rong looked at Chuan was not normal. It was filled with love and was as gentle as water. In front of Chuan, she turned from a leopard bearing its fangs into a docile little sheep. But she was not jealous because she knew that Chuan would not like this girl. Chuan raised his hand and Zhao Rong could not get close to him. Zhao Rong was stunned. She looked at Chuan in a daze and said in a surprised voice, "Cousin, why are you so cold to me? Could it be you don't like Rong any more? Do you still remember when we were young, you would carry me every day and bring me to the royal garden to pick fruits to eat? You gave the biggest and reddest fruits to me. You. Look at me carefully, I am Rong, the Rong, you loved the most when we were young." Chuan ignored her. He did not even want to look at her, feeling very dissatisfied with her in his heart. That sudden whip attack had almost injured Ning. If his reaction had been a bit slower, the one who would have been beaten to a pulp would have been the person he cared about the most. How could he talk to the Zhao Rong princess in a nice voice? Not to mention that he had not thought about her at all in these 3 years. When she appeared, she acted willfully and acted recklessly. If it wasn't for her father's face, he really would have taught her a lesson. "Ning, let's go." He pulled Ning's hand and turned to walk down the stairs. "Cousin, wait a minute." The Zhao Rong princess was ignored. She was filled with rage as she glared at Ning's back. With her temper, she naturally did not dare explode in front of Chuan, so she vented all of her anger on Ning. It was just a little eunuch. The emperor's cousin ignored her and affectionately pulled the little eunuch's hand. But this little eunuch was very bold. Not only did he not dodge, he allowed his cousin to pull him down the stairs. Her stomach was about to explode from anger. Chuan pretended like he did not hear it and continued walking down the stairs. Ning turned around and made a face at the Zhao Rong princess. The Zhao Rong princess' anger was not small at all. She was filled with anger and took out 3 flying knives from the bag on her waist, shooting them at Ning's upper, middle and lower body. So. The flying knives gave off an ear-piercing sound. "Gong gong, be careful." Seeing this, the shopkeeper couldn't help but warn. At the same time he closed his eyes, thinking that it was over. That little eunuch would have 3 holes poked through his body. If this little eunuch were to die, it would be like poking a hole in the sky. His floor of Tai he would probably have to close down. In an instant, Chuan suddenly turned around and waved his sleeve. A gust of wind blew out and the 3 flying knives lost their aim, falling to the ground. But he never thought that these 3 flying knives were just Zhao Rong's trick, wanting Chuan to make a move. She already had a flying knife in her hand. Taking advantage of Chuan waving his sleeve, she threw it at the back of Ning's head. Ning's Chuan Ning's heart. The shopkeeper had just recovered from the shock, but he was so shocked that his legs went soft and he fell on the ground. The Zhao Rong princess move was completely out of Chuan's expectations. When he found out that something was wrong, the flying knives were already 3 inches away from Ning's head. It was already too late. He forcefully pulled her and Ning fell into his embrace. Chapter 1199. So it's a girl. The shopkeeper rubbed his eyes and was surprised to see that the little eunuch had turned into a beautiful young girl. Moreover, she looked a bit familiar, like he had seen her before. Zhao Rong princess was completely stunned. She looked at Ning in a daze and after a while she finally recognized her. "So it's you? You liar, give me back my carriage." When she recognized Ning, her eyes seemed like they were about to spit out flames. She gritted her teeth and looked like she wanted to swallow Ning alive. A thick hatred was released from her body. Thinking of how she had been tricked by this girl in front of her, actually using the carriage she had spent a large amount of money to exchange with the other party. In the end, not only did the carriage hurt her but Zhui Feng had also used his hidden strength to turn her carriage into a pile of rotten wood. She had used a wicker basket to draw water for nothing. She had lost both her carriage and her face. In the end, it was all because of this girl in front of her. So when she saw Ning, it was like seeing her father's killer. She wanted to skin the other party alive. Ning giggled at her and said, "That carriage was something you were willing to exchange with me." I said no, but you insisted. If it wasn't for you being pitiful, I really wouldn't have been willing to exchange with you. That's right, miss, your carriage is fast and stable, it's much more comfortable than my carriage. It's really strange that there is such a stupid person in this world actually willing to exchange such a good carriage for my carriage, he. She even winked at the Zhao Rong princess in an infuriating manner. The situation just now was extremely dangerous. If it wasn't for Chuan saving her in time, the back of her head would have been pierced by the Zhao Rong princess flying knife. She did not have any deep grudges with her, she had just punished her a bit and tricked her into giving her a carriage. This girl actually wanted her life as soon as she made a move. No matter how good Chen Ning's temper was, she couldn't help feeling disgusted with the Zhao Rong princess. Naturally she would say anything that angered her. Her eloquence was amazing. Her words were like pouring oil onto a fire. Zhao Rong Junju felt like her chest was about to explode. Cousin, why do you want to protect her? Let go of her, I will definitely kill her today. The Zhao Rong princess' eyes turned red. She gritted her teeth as she picked up the black whip that Mo Chuan had thrown away and threw it at Chen Ning without a care. She did not aim at all and just used all her strength. The whip did not make any sound at all as it flew at Chen Ning like a poisonous snake. If you keep causing trouble, then don't blame me for being impolite. Mo Chuan knit his brows and he couldn't. He reached out with his right hand and easily grabbed the tip of the long whip. With his inner force, the long whip broke into pieces and fell to the ground. There was only an empty whip handle in the Zhao Zhao held. Seeing Mo Chuan protecting Chen Ning like this, the hatred in her heart deepened. She gritted her teeth and took out a flying knife from her bag. So. Several 10 flying knives charged at Chen Ning's face. She hated Chen Ning's face. She must have used this face to confuse her cousin, that's why her cousin would protect her like this. She hated it. No matter what, she would destroy that face that was prettier than her own. Mo Chuan's expression finally changed. He could smell a faint stench coming from the tip of his nose. There was actually a strong poison on these several dozen flying knives. Chapter 1200. Mo Chuan gave a sharp roar. He could block these flying knives, but with the flying knives flying around, perhaps he would accidentally injure other people. Their noisy fight on the stairs had already attracted a large group of onlookers, who surrounded the upper and lower floors to watch the fun. He swept his gaze across and saw a heavy leather pouch on the shopkeeper's waist. He immediately stretched out his hand and tore the leather pouch, causing copper coins to fall to the ground with a ding-ding-dang-dang sound. At this time, Mo Chuan was already holding a copper coin in his hand and he threw it at the flying knives. With a zheng-zheng-zheng sound, each flying knife was broken in half and fell to the floor. Everyone was stunned seeing this. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, who would have believed that these small copper coins could break the blades of the flying knives? This black-clothed young master's martial arts were very deep. Could it be that he was one of the legendary martial artists? But he was also this young. Everyone looked at Mo Chuan with a respectful gaze. They were not used to the Zhao Rong princess arrogance, so they all loudly cheered for Mo Chuan. Good hit. It's so satisfying just watching. A girl like her who was born without a mother should be taught a lesson. There were a few customers who came late and did not hear the Zhao Rong princess introduce herself. They did not know that the other side was the Zhao Rong princess, so they spoke without restraint. The Zhao Rong princess' eyes seemed like they were about to spit out flames. Hearing everyone's mocking her, she fiercely looked at the people around her. Do you not want to live anymore? How dare you insult this princess? This princess will chop off your heads one by one. She cursed in a flustered and exasperated manner. Someone in the crowd whispered, Shoo, she is the Zhao Rong princess, a person we can't offend. Hearing this, the crowd that was originally filled with mocking laughter immediately became silent, and no one dared to say another word. The person from before pulled back his head and hid in the crowd, silently slipping away. God, how could he have known that the other side was the Zhao Rong princess? He had actually insulted her parents. The Zhao Rong princess was the emperor's cousin. Insulting the Zhao Rong princess was the same as insulting the emperor. Insulting the emperor, this was equivalent to losing your head. If he didn't leave now, when would he? The Zhao Rong princess saw that she had stunned everyone with a single sentence and her proud face revealed a proud look. She pointed at Chen Ning with one hand and placed the other hand on her waist as she shouted, Quickly come over and kowtow to this princess. Don't think that this princess will forgive you just because my cousin is protecting you. You lied to this princess and almost caused this princess to lose her life. Don't think this princess will let you go. She saw Mo Chuan protect Chen Ning in his embrace with an intimate expression. Although the other side was wearing the clothes of a eunuch, she could not hide her elegant and refined appearance. She was filled with jealousy and jealousy. Chen Ning blinked at her, but before she could say anything, Zhao Mo Chuan. Chen eyes. The one who should kowtow and apologize is you. Zhao Rong, come over and apologize to her. You have acted viciously and tried to take her life again and again. Do you know your wrongs? His voice was severe and his icy gaze stared at Zhao Rong Junju. Princess Zhao Rong could not believe her ears. Chapter 1201. Zhao Rong Princess glared at Chen Ning with a murderous gaze, wishing she could dig 2 holes in the other side's face. Her chest was heaving up and down from her anger. Cousin, don't be fooled by this fox spirit's appearance. You don't know it all, but she has a vicious heart and is full of tricks. Rong met her on the way back to the capital, and she saw that Rong carriage was good, so she used flowery words to trick Rong into swapping it with her broken carriage. Later Rong saw through her trick and asked her to return the carriage, but she actually ordered her subordinates to attack Rong. She injured all my subordinates and she almost took Rong life. Cousin, don't you love Rong the most? Why are you scolding Rong for a fox spirit after not seeing her for 3 years? You hurt Rong's heart too much. She was angry and anxious as tears began to fall from her eyes. Mo Chuan did not know that Chen Ning had met her on the road, but he believed in Chen Ning. If this really happened, it would be Zhao Rong causing trouble and it wouldn't be Chen Ning provoking her first. But if she dared to provoke Ning, the one to suffer would be her. Today's matter, it was clearly your fault. You randomly attack people and you still dare to quibble. Zhao Rong, did Duke Ning teach you like this? His tone was already very strict and his words were merciless. He had already endured her for Duke Ning's sake, not making it too hard for her, but if she continued to be this aggressive, Mo Chuan did not mind teaching her a lesson on behalf of her father. He had watched Zhao Rong Princess grow up and he had always treated her like his own sister. He was strict when he needed to be strict and he would discipline her when he needed to. So Zhao Rong Princess loved and feared him since she was young. She dared to go against her father Duke Ning's words, but she listened to Mo Chuan's words. She was as obedient as a mouse meeting a cat. He never thought that after not seeing her for 3 years, the willful and innocent little girl from the past would become a completely different person. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, Mo Chuan would not have believed that this ruthless girl in front of him was the little tail that followed behind him in the past. Although Zhao Rong had grown from a 12 or 13-year-old girl to a slender and elegant young girl, in Mo Chuan's eyes, she would always be a little girl that needed to be disciplined. He did not care about her at all. Cousin, you're helping outsiders bully me and Rong, you don't love Rong anymore. You don't love Rong anymore. Princess Zhao Rong first widened her eyes in disbelief. Then she stomped her feet and began to cry loudly. She cried became more and more sad as her tears flowed out. This was because she knew that with Mo Chuan protecting Chen Ning, she wouldn't be able to escape. Chapter 1202. Chen Ning listened with a smile, not being angry at all. With Mo Chuan here, she knew that the Zhao Rong princess would not do anything to her. Hey little girl, your cousin said to kowtow to me as an apology. Are you deaf? Do you think you can get away with pretending to cry? Quickly come and kowtow to me. If you can make a sound, I'll forgive your sins. Her words were like pouring a spoonful of cold water on a pot of hot oil. It made Zhao Rong Junju so angry that she was like a Buddha in heaven and two Buddhas in the world. Her tears were quickly burned dry by her anger. You little slut, who do you think you are? You want this princess to kowtow to you? Go reincarnate in your next life. The Zhao Rong princess began to curse. Smelly vixen, cheap slut. The more she cursed, the worse it sounded. Qin Ning giggled and dug her ears. Zazie, the respected Zhao Rong princess, is actually spouting such filthy words. Aren't you afraid of losing your status? This kind of ugly words, even if you don't mind dirtying your mouth, I'd rather mind dirtying my ears. The Zhao Rong princess was so angry that her eyes turned black and she almost fainted. She gritted her teeth so hard that they creaked, and the temples on her forehead throbbed with pain. She had never met such a hateful and infuriating person in her life. This was simply angering her to death. She was so angry that she couldn't say a single word. She could only stare at Qin Ning, using her eyes to torture her. Qin Ning did not care at all. She smiled as she pulled Emo Chuan's hand. Emo Chuan, let's go. The air here doesn't smell good. Ooh, it's simply unbearably smelly. She raised her hand to fan it in front of her nose, revealing a disgusted expression. Her meaning was clear that she was disgusted with the Zhao Rong princess' unbearably smelly fart. The surrounding people couldn't help breaking out in laughter. They copied her and fanned their noses, saying, "So smelly, so smelly." Emo Chuan almost couldn't help laughing. He looked at her with a loving and pampering gaze and rubbed her hair. He said with a nod, "All right, let's go." He thought that Ning really had a way. With just a few words, she was able to make the Zhao Rong princess turn into a steamed bun. For someone like Zhao Rong Junju, who was crafty and unruly, when she met Ning she was at a disadvantage. In front of so many customers, he didn't want to reveal his identity. He didn't want to reveal Qin Ning's identity to avoid unnecessary trouble. Since he had achieved his goal of teaching the Zhao Rong princess a lesson, he was not willing to stay here any longer. The Zhao Rong princess' face turned pale. Her hatred for Qin Ning had already reached its peak. How could she let her leave like this? Her hatred for Qin Ning had already reached its peak, so how could she let her leave like this? She had been angered by Qin Ning, but when Emo Chuan and Qin Ning walked down the stairs and arrived at the entrance of the Taihe floor, she finally came back to her senses. She quickly ran down the stairs. She jumped out and opened her arms, blocking in front of Qin. "Little slut, you want to run? No way." Qin Ning saw that she was not going to give up and was not going to stop, so she raised her brows. "Who are you cursing, little bitch?" she suddenly asked. "The little slut is cursing you." Zhao Rong Junju blurted out without thinking. Qin Ning pursed her lips into a smile and said, "That's right, the little slut is cursing me." Her smile was like a flower bud blooming. Emo Chuan also gave her a gentle smile, secretly praising her wit. The surrounding guests couldn't hold back as they broke out in laughter. Chapter 1204. You. Just you wait for this princess. This princess will not forgive you. I will not rest until you are dead. The Zhao Rong princess placed all the humiliation she had suffered today on Qin Ning's head. She raised her head and fiercely glared at Qin Ning. Then under the laughter of the crowd, she quickly ran away. "All right, little girl, I'll be waiting for you." Qin Ning smiled at her back in an uncaring manner and loudly said this. The Zhao Rong princess' heart filled with even more hatred, but she did not dare look back for trouble with Qin Ning. This was because she could not wait to go back to the palace to take a bath. She wanted to wash herself clean from head to toe, washing away the stench and fleas from the beggar's body. Qin Ning's eyes flashed. She saw a gold and silver coin bag on the ground. It was dropped by the Zhao Rong princess. She quickly left and did not notice it at all. Qin Ning bent down to pick it up. Using her hand to weigh it, she found that it was very heavy. It was clear that there was quite a bit of gold and silver inside. She casually threw the coin bag to the beggar and said, "Consider this as compensation for that little girl hurting you. Ooh, it's the money she paid for your bowl." The beggar was surprised and happy. He held the coin bag and couldn't stop smiling. He even forgot the pain in his chest as he repeatedly thanked Qin Ning. Qin Ning shook her head and said, "You don't need to thank me. This coin bag belongs to that little girl, it's not mine." She took a step forward and said in a low voice, "The girl that fell on you is the Zhao Rong princess. If you want to live, it's best if you leave the capital city. Go far away and never come back." The beggar's face instantly changed and his body began to tremble. Mother, if he knew that girl was the princess earlier, he would not have dared to grab her clothes and ask her to pay for his bowl. He gratefully looked at Chen Ning. He stood up and grabbed the coin bag, quickly disappearing without a trace. Chen Ning was not trying to scare him, rather she was trying to save this beggar's life. The Zhaorong princess had thrown herself at a beggar in front of everyone, losing this kind of face. The first person she hated was herself, but she could not do anything to her. Then the second thing she needed to do was to make this beggar disappear from this world. Only then would she be able to shut everyone's mouths. With her ability to read people, her judgment of the Zhaorong princess would not be wrong. Emo Chuan's brows slightly knit. He understood the meaning behind Chen Ning's words. Thinking of the Zhaorong princess' ruthless actions and the deep hatred she had for Chen Ning, he couldn't help giving a snort. This girl that doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, I have to properly discipline her. Chen Ning revealed a smile as she looked at him. When did you have this kind of cousin? How come I didn't know about it? Emo Chuan shook his head and said, this is a long story, let's go back first. Chen I said, he said. The two of them had originally wanted to revisit old times, but they didn't think that they would run into the matter of Zhaorong Junju. They didn't even have the mood to eat. You want? The Zhao, the two Rong. The two. Said. Shao come. Ning, the two. Is there something else? Chen Ning raised her brows and asked. Two esteemed guests, please save this little one's life. With a piu tong sound, the shopkeeper kneeled down in front of Emo Chuan and Chen Ning, continuously kowtowing. Chapter 1205. The so-called monk can run but the temple can't run. The Zhaorong princess would definitely vent her anger on his restaurant in the future. So if he wanted to keep his life in the restaurant, his only hope was these two people in front of him. To be more precise, it was this mysterious black-clothed man with high martial arts skills. Emo Chuan immediately understood that the shopkeeper had already vaguely guessed his identity. He thought about it for a bit before taking a jade pendant from his waist and placing it in the shopkeeper's hand. Then he pulled Chen Ning's hand and left without saying a word. The shopkeeper looked at the jade pendant in his hand and his face was filled with confusion, but it instantly turned into joy. He kowtowed several times to Emo Chuan's back before happily standing up. He tightly held the jade pendant like it was a treasure that fell from the heavens. When he returned to the restaurant, he was filled with confidence. With this token, even if the Zhaorong princess brought people to smash his restaurant, he would not be afraid. Because seeing this was like seeing the emperor. When Emo Chuan and Chen Ning returned to the palace, they received a summons from Empress Dowager Zhou. She told Emo Chuan to quickly go to the Peaceful Life Palace to discuss something. The two of them did not even have time to speak before Emo Chuan changed his clothes and headed to the Peaceful Life Palace to see Empress Dowager Zhou. Emo Chuan had kept the matter of Chen Ning leaving the palace a secret. In the past few days, he had announced that the Empress was sick from the poison in her body and needed to rest, so she would not see anyone. Empress Dowager Zhou had sent Su Jin to visit the Guanyu Palace several times, but Emo Chuan had sent people to stop her at the door. So, Empress Dowager Zhou's decree did not mention Chen Ning. Your son greets mother. Emo Chuan greeted Empress Dowager Zhou according to the rules. He was wondering why Empress Dowager Zhou had suddenly summoned him. Could it be that the Zhaorong princess came to the Peaceful Life Palace to complain to his mother? He was thinking that if Zhaorong dared to distort the truth and throw the dirty water at Ninger, he would explain everything to his mother. The emperor has worked hard these past few days. This widow has made some of your favorite dishes and snacks, so I called you over to eat with mother. Empress Dowager Zhou's expression was very gentle. She held Emo Chuan's hand as she sat at the table, smiling as she called for Su Jin to serve the dishes. Emo Chuan secretly felt it was strange, but he still respectfully sat beside Empress Dowager Zhou, personally helping her serve the dishes. In this period of time he had been busy dealing with government affairs and adding in Chu Xiaobai's illness and Empress Dowager Zhou's illness. It could be said that he was very busy. Mother, this is mother's favorite dish, you should eat a bit more. He felt very guilty and ashamed, thinking that he had to eat a good meal with Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou smiled as she ate the food he gave her and also personally gave him a jade prawn ball. Emperor, eat a bit more. Mother likes to see you eat. She lovingly looked at Emo Chuan with eyes filled with motherly love. Emo to eat it. Emo eat. Emo Chuan smiled and nodded. Emo Chuan liked to eat sweet things, so Empress Dowager Zhou had prepared several desserts for him, all of which were his favorites. Eee. This is a rose layer cake personally made by this widow, does it taste good? Empress Dowager Zhou asked with a smile. Mother still remembers your son's favorite rose layer cake. Speaking of which, your son hasn't eaten it in several years, but the taste is still as good as before. Chapter 1206. Emo Chuan knew that Empress Dowager Zhou calling him into the palace was not as simple as eating or drinking tea. She definitely had something to say to him. Empress Dowager Zhou said with a faint smile, "It's good that you like it, mother will make it for you often in the future." Chuan, do you remember that you weren't the only one who liked this widow's rose layer cake? Thinking back to the past, there was a little girl who was bullied by you to the point of crying over this rose layer cake? She looked at Emo Chuan with a smile. Emo Chuan raised his brows. Mother is talking about the Zhao Rong princess? Empress Dowager Zhou smiled and clapped her hand as she said, "That's right, it's hard for you to remember your cousin even though you're busy. Speaking of her Zhao Rong title, it was personally given by you and given by your mouth. 3 years ago, she was sent away by Duke Ning to learn martial arts and has now returned to the capital. You never would have thought that the skinny little girl of the past would become a beautiful girl like a flower. If you saw her, you definitely wouldn't recognize her." Emo Chuan gave a cold laugh, thinking that he really wouldn't recognize her. She had become so black-hearted and ruthless. How was she still that innocent little girl from the past? Learning martial arts? Only the heavens knew what she had learned in the past 3 years. Empress Dowager Zhou did not notice Emo Chuan's cold tone. Her face revealed a rare happy expression as she said with a faint smile, "Zhao Rong is a girl who changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood, becoming more and more beautiful. This widow has heard that she has learned martial arts this time and has a generous personality, so this widow really likes her. You haven't seen her for 3 years, have you thought about this cousin?" She and the Zhao Rong princess mother were cousins and the two of them were good friends before they married. Therefore the Zhao Rong princess and Emo Chuan were blood-related cousins. Emo Chuan was older than the Zhao Rong princess by a few years. He was very mature and always had a serious look on his face. The Zhao Rong princess was the daughter of Duke Ning at an old age, so he pampered her. She was spoiled at a young age, but she had a nemesis which was Emo Chuan. At that time, Emo Chuan wasn't the emperor and the two families were cousins. The one Zhao Rong princess liked the most was her older cousin, following behind Emo Chuan like a little tail. When Emo Chuan practiced martial arts, she would applaud him from the side. When Emo Chuan studied, she would tilt her little head to the side and babble with him. After Emo Chuan ascended to the throne, he spent all his time on politics, so she rarely saw Emo Chuan. Only Empress Dowager Zhou liked her very much, often calling her into the palace to accompany her. Sometimes when Emo Chuan came to the Peaceful Life Palace, she would see him a few times. Chapter 1207. Empress Dowager Zhou had Emo Chuan post an imperial notice, asking for medicine for the princess. As long as someone could save the princess, they would agree to any condition. After the imperial proclamation was posted, it did attract many people who came to treat Zhao Rong Juanzhu's illness. However, they were all Jianghu swindlers who used the excuse of treating her illness to gain benefits. In a fit of anger, Empress Dowager Zhou sent out a decree to behead all of these swindlers, so no one dared to take the imperial notice. But the princess' illness was getting worse by the day. Her mother cried all day and Empress Dowager Zhou's heart was filled with sorrow. When everyone was filled with despair, there was a Taoist nun who came to take the notice, saying that she could cure the princess' illness. When she saw the princess, she didn't check her pulse like a doctor would. She just took a look and took out a pill, saying that as long as the princess took this pill, she would be cured immediately. How could the Duke Ning couple believe her words? They just casually gave the princess the pill. If it was a poison pill, wouldn't that be harming their beloved daughter's life? But that Taoist nun vowed that if anything happened to Zhao Rong Junzhu after taking the medicine, then she would have to pay with her life. The Duke Ning couple thought about it again and again. Seeing that their beloved daughter was in danger, they could only give it a try and gave the princess the pill. Who would have thought that the pill would have a miraculous effect? After the princess took the pill, she could stand up the next day and after 3 days she was cured. The Duke Ning couple was filled with gratitude towards the Taoist nun, taking out 1,000 gold coins as a reward. The Taoist nun did not accept it and said that she was fated with the princess. She wanted to take her as a disciple and bring her back to the sect to teach her martial arts. The princess' parents only had this one daughter and they loved her as much as their lives. How could they bear to let their beloved daughter go far away with a Taoist nun they had never met before? But the Taoist nun took out the imperial notice, making the two of them speechless. Helplessly, the Duke Ning couple could only let the princess become the Taoist nun's disciple and follow the Taoist nun to learn martial arts. After leaving, there was no news of them. In the second year after the princess left the capital, the Duke Ning's wife, who was Empress Dowager Zhou's cousin, became ill from missing her daughter. Duke Ning sent a large amount of people to search for his beloved daughter and the Taoist nun, but it was to no avail. The Duke Ning's wife could not see her beloved daughter, so she passed away. Before she passed away, she held Empress Dowager Zhou's hand. He did not reply to Empress Dowager Zhou's words because he could see that Empress Dowager Zhou's unspoken meaning was to bring him and Zhao Rong Princess together. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help opening her mouth, but before she could say anything, Mo Chuan then said, "Mother, your son has sent people to invite the number one divine doctor in the world to personally treat Ning. Ninger's body is now fine." Empress Dowager Li Zhou was. Dowager Zhou was. Dowager Qin. Dowager Qin Yi Xiao Qin. Rong Ning he shi he Ning Zhao he and Qin he Dowager he and Chang Ning Zhao Qin King he one he. Empress Dowager Zhou revealed a sincere smile this time. She couldn't help standing up from her chair and grabbing Mo Chuan's hand. "If we invite the number one divine doctor in the world, Xiaobai can be saved." Chapter 1209. Mo Chuan softly said, "Hearing that Xiaobai can be saved, Mother is very happy, but hearing that Ninger has been cured, Mother seems to be a bit disappointed." "Mother, aren't you being too biased?" Hearing her son's blaming words, Empress Dowager Zhou's old face couldn't help turning red. Mo Chuan's words coincidentally pointed out her thoughts. She did hope that Qin Ning's poison wouldn't be cured and it would be best if she stayed in bed like this. That way she would have a reason to find another empress for Mo Chuan. As for Chu Xiaobai, he was the one she truly cared about. She had gone to visit Chu Xiaobai before. Seeing him like this, being as thin as a skeleton, her heart was about to shatter. Thinking that Chu Xiaobai had become like this because of Qin Ning, she did not blame Chu Xiaoyang. Rather, she placed all the blame on Qin Ning. Since the day Mo Chuan married her, there had been endless disturbances. Otherwise, why would he let her be bitten by a poisonous snake on their wedding night, even if it wasn't too late or too early? And because of her, Chu Xiaobai's life and death were unknown. Chu Xiaoyang was sent to prison. All of these were the fault of this girl surnamed Xin. Hearing that she had been cured by the divine doctor, Empress Dowager Zhou was very disappointed. She thought that she had hidden it well, but she never thought that Mo Chuan would still see through it. But Empress Dowager Zhou was old and experienced. Her face only turned slightly hot before returning to normal. "Emperor, what crime did Xiaoyang commit that you want to send him to prison? You said that he stole something from you. What kind of great thing was it that was worth it for you to make such a big fuss?" Empress Dowager Zhou's face turned serious as she coldly asked. Mo Chuan bowed and replied, "This is a large matter of the court, it's best if Mother doesn't ask." Empress Dowager Zhou's face was filled with anger as she forcefully slapped the table and shouted, "How dare you? Emperor, stop using these kinds of words to fool this widow. Do you think this widow is deaf or blind? You are clearly using your position to take revenge. For the sake of that girl surnamed Xin, you actually wrongly accused your own nephew and even sent him to the heavenly prison. Do you think that by doing this you can stop the mouths of the people in the world? Are you going to issue an imperial edict next and sentence Chu Xiaoyang to death?" Mo Chuan maintained a calm expression as he calmly said, "Your son has already said that this is a large matter of the country and Mother does not know the cause. Your son does not blame Mother, but your son does not think your son did anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, so does this widow's wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, so this widow is wrong? Do you dare ask yourself, do you have a clear conscience?" "I've said it before, I have a clear conscience. Your son." Empress Zhou pointed at Mo Chuan and said. She was very shocked that Chu Xiaoyang was sent to prison. Mo Yang Chuan, Qin, and Qin, and T. Mo Xiaoyang Chen, Xiao Ti Qin. Qin Ti Qin, and Qin, T said, T. Se. Xiao Qin said B. T. What she didn't want to hear the rumors behind her back. She wanted to put an end to everyone's criticism. But Mo Chuan had sent Chu Xiaoyang to prison for a small crime of theft. Did he want the world to be in chaos? When it appeared on the battlefield, it would definitely shock everyone and have an immeasurable effect. Mo didn't know about this. Mo Chuan tilted his head and found that no one was eavesdropping. Then he walked beside Empress Dowager Zhou and lowered his voice. Mo of Zhou's Mo of Sheikh's, Qin, Mo of Qin, Xiao Mo is the Xiao Qin of Ling. The Northern Qi envoy brought a very important 5-repeating crossbow blueprint to sell to West Chu, but this blueprint was stolen from the embassy. According to your son's investigation, the person who stole this blueprint was not someone else, but Chu Xiaoyang. Yangchen what? Chapter 12:11. Empress Dowager Zhou didn't care about the tea splashing on her as she grabbed Emo Chuan's wrist and anxiously said, "Emperor, this is not a small matter, you have to investigate this clearly. Don't wrongly accuse a good person. According to what this widow knows, Chu Xiaoyang, you wouldn't do this kind of thing. What benefits does stealing the blueprints bring to him?" Emo Chuan said with a cold smile, "What benefits only he knows. Your son locked him up in the heavenly prison, but he only admitted that he stole the blueprints, but he refused to say why he stole them. Mother, Chu Xiaoyang has already personally admitted this matter, it is definitely not your son wrongly accusing him. Mother said that you wrongly accuse a good person. Hey, he did this kind of thing, can he still be considered a good person?" Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes popped out and her face revealed a look of disbelief. She muttered, "But this widow feels that Xiaoyang is stubborn and thinks highly of himself, he shouldn't be able to steal like this unless..." Her voice came to an abrupt halt as an extremely terrifying thought flashed through her mind. Her face immediately turned pale. "Impossible, impossible. The emperor has always treated him well, there is nothing you should have done to him." She stopped halfway and couldn't continue. Did the emperor really not do anything to Chu Xiaoyang? He clearly did. His own son stole Chu Xiaoyang's most beloved girl, so Chu Xiaoyang must hate him to the bone, right? Thinking about it like this, it wasn't strange for him to do something like this. But in the end, the main culprit of this matter was still that girl surnamed Chen. Empress Dowager Zhou looked down, hiding the complex emotions in her eyes. She took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Then she regained her calm expression. "Emperor, have you found the stolen blueprints? Have you caught him red-handed?" Emo Chuan nodded, "The blueprints have been found." He did not help Chu Xiaoyang's innocence, this was just a reply to Empress Dowager Zhou's first sentence. But in Empress Dowager Zhou's ears, it meant that he was caught red-handed. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help giving a faint sigh and saying, "Emperor, what are you prepared to do about this matter?" With the facts in front of her, she couldn't explain it for Chu Xiaoyang. She just hoped that this matter wouldn't become bigger. "Your son will not casually convict Chu Xiaoyang, mother can be assured of this. We have to ask why he stole the blueprints. If he really has disloyal intentions, then how to deal with him, your son will ask mother." Hearing Emo Chuan's words, Empress Dowager Zhou could finally relax. She was most worried that Emo Chuan would stubbornly charge Chu Xiaoyang and secretly punish him behind her back. "Good Emperor. You're safe. I haven't taught you for so many years in vain." She revealed a faint smile. The mother and son looked at each other and smiled, disappearing into a smile. Qin Yun Dowagers. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart calmed down and she thought of another matter. Emperor Zhaorong has returned to the capital after 3 years, this is a joyous matter. Duke Ning has been missing his daughter for 3 years and has been bedridden, not going to court. Now that Zhaorong has returned to the capital, his illness has improved a bit, so this widow is prepared to hold a large palace banquet during the Dragon Boat Festival. That day is Zhaorong's 16th birthday, so this widow wants to invite all the ministers into the palace to celebrate Zhaorong's birthday. Emperor, what do you think? Chapter 12:12. Empress Dowager Zhou nodded and watched as Emo Chuan left the Peaceful Life Palace, disappearing from her sight. She couldn't help rubbing her forehead, feeling a sudden pain. She called out in a low voice, "Su Jin." Su Jin knew that Empress Dowager Zhou and her son had things to say, so she had already moved to the side. When she saw Emo Chuan leave the Peaceful Life Palace, she rushed to Empress Dowager Zhou's room to wait. She opened the door and saw Empress Dowager Zhou's pale face. She asked in a worried voice, "Empress Dowager, are you not feeling well? This servant will call the doctor over." Empress Dowager Zhou shook her head and said, "No need to call the doctor, this widow will be fine after resting for a bit." Su Jin quickly helped Empress Dowager Zhou lie down on the bed and gently massaged her forehead. Empress Dowager Zhou closed her eyes and silently laid there, not saying a word. Su Jin also held her breath, not daring to breathe too loudly. After a long time, Empress Dowager Zhou opened her eyes. Her empty eyes looked at the peony embroidered on the bed and she let out a long sigh. "Is the Empress Dowager still not asleep? If there is something bothering you, you can talk to this servant about it." Su Jin spoke in a soft voice. When her soft voice entered Empress Dowager Zhou's ears, it was like a trickle, giving her an indescribable comfort. Her mind was in a mess, but she couldn't help patting Su Jin's hand. "Stop massaging, come and talk to this widow." Su Jin brought a chair over and sat in front of Empress Dowager Zhou's bed. She gently massaged her legs while looking up at Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou thought about it and said, "What do you think of Zhao Rong's child?" During the day, Zhao Rong had come to the palace to see Empress Dowager Zhou. Su Jin had been waiting on the side, so she had seen Zhao Rong's princess once. When she heard Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly ask this, her heart skipped a beat. She had already guessed Empress Dowager Zhou's thoughts and her palms began to sweat. She had a stunned expression, not knowing how to reply. After a while she finally understood Empress Dowager Zhou's meaning and replied in a small voice, "Zhao Rong's princess has already grown up, she should have been married last year and should be 16 this year. Does the Empress Dowager want to find a good family for Zhao Rong's princess?" Empress Dowager Zhou narrowed her eyes in satisfaction and said with a smile, "It's still you who understands this widow's thoughts the best. That's right, this widow wants to find a husband for Zhao Rong. Who do you think is the most suitable?" Su Jin thought to herself, isn't it obvious? The Empress Dowager had taken a liking to Zhao Rong Junju and despised young Miss Shen. She wanted to make an empress. Chapter 12-13. The Empress Dowager's thoughts are naturally good. I wonder if you've asked the Emperor's opinion? Su Jin thought of Empress Dowager Zhou's ugly expression when she came in and knew that Empress Dowager Zhou must have been rebuffed by Mo Chuan. Empress Dowager Zhou gave a snort. His opinion? He is captivated by her beauty, being captivated by the Chen family's girl's face. However, this matter isn't urgent, haste makes waste. Right now he only has that Chen girl in his heart. This widow will slowly create an opportunity for Zhao Rong, letting Chuan get closer to Zhao Rong. When the time comes, this widow will take care of Zhao Rong. That Chen family's girl is not worthy of being my West Chu country's empress. When she mentioned Shen Ning, it was hard for her to hide the anger in her heart. Su Jin did not dare interrupt and just lowered her head without saying a word. Empress Dowager Zhou then said, "It will be the 5th month's Dragon Boat Festival in a few days. That day is Zhao Rong's birthday, so this widow will hold a banquet to celebrate Zhao Rong's birthday. As for the specifics, you have to make sure this banquet is lively and let Zhao Rong have a good time. Also, you better think of a way to prevent that Chen family's girl from attending this banquet." Her voice suddenly became very low, like she was afraid of being heard. Su Jin felt wronged for Chen Ning. She softly said, "Empress Dowager, isn't this unfair to the Empress?" Empress Dowager Zhou stared at her and said, "Unfair? This widow feels that it is unfair for the Empress position to fall onto her. This widow just wants to set things right, to prevent her from taking over the nest." Su Jin did not dare say anything else. "Chen girl, I'll leave this matter to you. In short, this widow doesn't want to see that Chen family's girl's face at the banquet. If you can't do this task well, then you will be punished," Empress Dowager Zhou said with a serious expression. Su Jin knew that Empress Dowager Zhou had already made up her mind, but if she really did as Empress Dowager Zhou said, wouldn't that be going against her conscience? She was in a dilemma. After seeing Empress Dowager Zhou say this, she closed her eyes and not long after she began to snore. Mo Chuan, who returned to the Guanyu Palace, naturally did not know Empress Dowager Zhou's plan. He quickly rushed back to the palace and found that it was already late. The room was filled with red candles and a slim figure was reflected in the window. His heart filled with a warm feeling. The feeling of being waited for someone was very good. He smiled as he pushed open the door. He entered the room. "I've eaten at Mother Place, why haven't you eaten yet?" "I've already eaten at Muhu's place. Why haven't you eaten? Have been waiting for me?" Mo Chuan's eyes fell onto the dishes on the table and he felt very guilty. Chen Ning revealed a faint smile and said, "Then you won't have the luck to taste it. These dishes are new dishes that I personally made. I wanted to wait for you to taste them together, but now I can only enjoy them alone." Chen Chen Dowager what she said and said and said she said and said. Ling said he said. Chen Chen Dowager you said, she said she, Chen Jin. He thought. Ling Mo said thought. He, thought, said. How Dao Chin, San. Tian. Jin. Tian. I. At this moment, he saw the 4 dishes on the table, and his interest was immediately aroused. Chapter 12-14. This dish looked like scrambled eggs. The color was golden and it was incomparably bright. Mo Chuan knew that even if it was scrambled eggs, if it was made by her hands, the taste would be different. Who would have thought that when the chopsticks entered his mouth before he could even chew, his face would suddenly change? His lips tightly pursed and his face had a very strange expression. Chen Ning's black and white eyes stared at him without blinking. She asked with a smile, "Is it good?" Emo Chuan used a lot of strength to finally swallow the egg in his mouth. He didn't even dare chew, and after swallowing it, he immediately drank a cup of water before he could speak. "Ning, this? What kind of dish is this?" He looked over with wide eyes. No matter how he looked at it, it was just a plate of scrambled eggs. But was this really scrambled eggs? "This is bitter melon juice scrambled eggs. It can clear away internal heat and nourish one's body." "Is it bitter? Do you like the taste?" Chen Ning asked with a giggle. "Bitter?" It was simply too bitter. It was so bitter that he couldn't even open his mouth. "It's good that it's bitter," Chen Ning said with a smile. "How about you try something sweet?" Emo Chuan quickly nodded. He was afraid that the other three dishes would be strange. When he looked closely, he found that there was a plate of stir-fried spinach, a plate of cold tofu, and a plate of sugared red saint fruit. He picked up a red saint fruit without any hesitation and placed it in his mouth. After chewing it, he felt like his mouth had been stung by a scorpion, immediately becoming hot. "So, spicy?" His fair, handsome face instantly turned bright red. Even the tips of his ears were completely red. He couldn't eat spicy food the most. Chen Ning's bowl of chili soup was so spicy that he couldn't even speak. But even like this, he was not willing to spit out the red saint fruit in his mouth because she had personally made it. He stretched his neck and swallowed the red saint fruit with great difficulty. His tears came out from the spiciness. Chen Ning helped him wipe his tears while saying with a smile, I never said this dish was sweet. This is red saint fruit mixed with chow tian peppers. It's the most spicy. You can't eat spicy food, so why do you have to eat spicy food instead of sweet food?" Emo Chuan had already seen that this girl was playing tricks on him. He deeply looked at her, and when he opened his mouth to speak, his voice had already become hoarse. "Ning, did you personally make these 4 dishes?" "Of course." Chen Ning's smile disappeared and she nodded with a serious expression. "As long as it's made by you, I have to eat it." Emo Chuan did not care about the sweat on his forehead from the spiciness as he reached out with his chopsticks to grab the spinach. When the dish entered his mouth, his brows moved. No one would have thought that this was vinegar-fried spinach. It was sour. But Emo Chuan's expression did not change as he slowly chewed it and swallowed it. His expression did not change as he picked up the last dish, the cold tofu. Emo tofu was mixed with sugar. This tofu was actually made with sugar. He now completely understood the true meaning behind her personally making these 4 dishes for him. His heart was filled with tenderness. "Do you like the taste of these 4 dishes?" Chen Ning winked at him. "I like it, I really like it." Emo Chuan replied without any hesitation. "Then, do you like it?" She rolled her eyes. Chapter 12:15. Emo Chuan reached out and tightly gripped her hand. "Ups and downs, life is full of flavors. You can be assured, I will tightly hold your hand for the rest of my life and taste life's ups and downs with you." Chen Ning couldn't help giving a satisfied sigh. She buried her head in Emo Chuan's chest and her lips curled into a sweet smile. He actually understood her feelings. It was not a waste for her to painstakingly make these 4 dishes. Speaking of using dishes as a metaphor for life, it was an inspiration she had read in a book. She suddenly had an idea and tried it out. She wanted to play a joke on Emo Chuan, but she never thought that Emo Chuan would be this smart. Not only did he guess her question, he even gave it a perfect score. With a husband like this, what more could a woman ask for? The two of them hugged each other and listened to each other's heartbeats. Their hearts were filled with warmth. After a while, Chen Ning finally left Emo Chuan's embrace. She pursed her lips and looked at Emo Chuan with a smile. "Is my cooking better, or is the food in the Empress Dowager's palace better?" Emo Chuan slowly said, "Do you want to hear the truth?" "Of course. Naturally, the food in Mother's palace is better," Emo Chuan honestly said. Then he said, "But I like eating the food you personally made." He reached out to hug her and kissed her on the cheek. Chen Ning's face turned red and she angrily said, "Smooth talking." The smile on her face disappeared in a flash and she said with a serious expression, "All right, you're telling the truth. Emo Chuan, I'll only ask once. Do you really think that Chu Xiaoyang is the mastermind behind stealing the blueprints?" Emo Chuan had been waiting for this question from her. He thought about it and gently shook his head. "Then do you know where I disguised myself as a eunuch and went?" Emo Chuan shook his head again. "I went to Minister Li Zhixing's palace. You said that I have the ability to see through people's hearts. That's right, I can tell if a person is telling the truth or not from small details. So, what I want to tell you is that the real mastermind is not Chu Xiaoyang but rather Li. She did not finish because Mo Chuan reached out a finger and placed it on her lips, stopping her from continuing. Xue Ning, you don't need to say it, I already know. He gently looked into her eyes. His dark eyes were as deep as a cold lake. You know? If you knew it wasn't Chu Xiaoyang, why did you send him to prison? Why are you doing this? Chen Ning's eyes opened wide as she looked at him in disbelief. I naturally have my reasons for doing this. What's the reason? She asked. Ning, don't ask any more. There are some things you're better off not knowing. Mo Chuan stroked her face and said in a soft voice, what I can tell you is that I'm not doing this to vent my anger and it's not because of you. Believe me, Mo Chuan, am not a person who can't distinguish between public and private matters. Although his voice was soft, his eyes were firm and focused. Chen Ning suddenly felt that she really couldn't see through him, but she believed every word he said. Alright, I won't ask any more. Mo Chuan, I believe you. Mo Chuan reached out to pick her up and walked out of the room. Where are you carrying me? Don't you trust me? I'm going to sell you, he answered, laughing. Because her trust him made his heart burst with joy. He couldn't help revealing a smile from the corner of his eyes. Are you willing? She giggled. Chapter 12:16. Mo Chuan carried her to the hot spring room on the side. There was a wide hot spring pool inside that was steaming hot and filled with white steam. He remembered that she liked to soak in hot springs, so he specially ordered people to build this hot spring for her in the Guanyu Palace. Take a good bath, I'll wait for you outside. Mo Chuan gently placed her on the edge of the pool and then turned to leave the screen. Chen Ning was a bit surprised. She never thought that after being husband and wife for so long, he would still be this polite. It seemed like finding an ancient person as a husband wasn't bad. She revealed a gentle smile and began to take off her clothes to enter the pool. Who would have thought that when she took off her clothes, her waist would suddenly tighten and she would be hugged from behind. That familiar and clear aura could be felt, as well as that warm and firm embrace. She couldn't help looking back at him with a look of annoyance. I even praised you for being honest, but I never thought that you wouldn't keep your words and actually peeked at me. Mo Chuan's lips fell onto her snow-white earlobes. He hugged her soft and slender waist, feeling the sweet scent of a young girl, and couldn't help being distracted. Ning, go find the divine doctor tomorrow, he said in a soft voice. What for? Her neck shrank back from the itch. Have him quickly cure the poison in your body, I can't wait any longer. His muffled voice came out of his mouth. He could see, touch and hug her, but he couldn't eat her. He really had enough of this kind of torture. In the end, it was all because old man Zhang's medical skills weren't good enough. He couldn't even cure the poison in her body and wanted him to wait for a month. Wasn't this just torturing him to death? Chen Ning's lips couldn't help twitching. So this was what he was thinking. Men, did they really use their lower bodies to think? Even Mo Chuan was not an exception? But thinking about it, this couldn't be blamed on Mo Chuan. He had lived for more than 20 years without getting close to women. Finally, the day of his wedding night, which he had been looking forward to, had come, but such an accident had occurred. It was already not easy for him to endure it until now. All right, I'll find master to take my pulse tomorrow, she replied in a soft voice. Mo Chuan's arms tightened around her and he took a deep breath before reluctantly letting her go. He untied her hair and said with a faint smile, all right, you can wash in peace. I won't disturb you again. After saying this, he turned around and walked out, not even looking back. Chen Ning looked at his back and felt like he was running away. She couldn't help pursing her lips into a smile. When he was hugging her just now, she clearly felt the change in him and the heat of his body. He originally wanted to come in and tease her, but he didn't expect that the one who was aroused was himself. Seeing him leave in a hurry, she was certain that he was going to take a cold shower. Sure enough, when she returned to her room after taking a bath in the hot spring, Mo Chuan appeared in front of her with a cold aura. His long black hair was dripping with water. Chen Ning smiled as she took a towel and wiped it for him. The fire in Mo Chuan's body had been extinguished and his heart was filled with tenderness. He held her hand and called out in a low voice, Ning, and I'm here. What's the matter? She replied in a soft voice. Nothing, I just wanted to call you. He said in a low voice. You really are silly. Mo Chuan couldn't help smiling. She was the first person to call him silly. If anyone else dared to say this, their head would fall to the ground. Chin Ning. Chin Ning Chin Ning. Chin said, Ning Ling. If we don't discipline her, I'm afraid she'll go from bad to worse. Chen Ning shook her head with a smile and said, of course she needs to be taught a lesson, but your method is wrong. She is already a 15-16-year-old girl. She is no longer that little slug that follows you around all day with a runny nose. You hit her, but what if she comes after you? So I won't allow it. So it's like this, you little girl. You can't just say it, you have to beat around the bush to tease me. See how I'll deal with you. Chapter 12:18. Chen Ning smiled as she bent over, trying to hide in his embrace, but she couldn't break free. Her face was pink like a flower blooming, looking very beautiful. Mo Chuan unknowingly stopped. He lowered his head and deeply kissed her on the lips. Her face was still red as she wrapped her arms around his neck. She couldn't breathe from his passionate kiss. I'll let you go today, but if you dare do this again, I won't let you off. Mo Chuan raised his head and his eyes lit up. He could already feel the fire in his body stirring again. He really wanted to eat her up in one bite. Chen Ning blinked and suddenly understood why he was so passionate tonight. He even wanted her to find Gu Qingzi to cure the poison. He was worried that Empress Dowager Zhou would do something, so he wanted to cook the rice. He really was a fool. The two of them were filled with tenderness and sweetness. They only had each other in their eyes and there was no one else. They didn't know that at this moment, there was someone who couldn't eat and couldn't sleep. Duke Ning's palace. In a small building in the back garden, there was the sound of porcelain shattering. It was followed by a young girl's angry shout. Bastard, idiot, idiot. In the room, there was a row of maids kneeling on the ground. They all had looks of fear as they lowered their heads, not daring to look up. Zhao Rong Princess grabbed a beautiful vase beside her and viciously smashed it on the ground, shattering the porcelain. You're all idiots and idiots. I asked you to help this princess catch lice, but you can't even do such a small thing. Why is this princess' head still itchy? Her hair was loose and her eyes were filled with flames as she angrily scolded the maids. Since returning to the palace, she had immediately changed her clothes. She had bathed several times and her delicate skin had turned red, but she could still smell the sour smell of a beggar on her body. Especially her scalp that kept itching, and there were red bumps all over her body, making her feel very itchy. The maids found several lice and fleas from the clothes she had taken off, but there were still a lot of lice that crawled into her hair. But when these lice and fleas entered her hair, especially with how thick her hair was, it was like finding a needle in a haystack. Damn, it's itchy again. Zhao Rong Princess felt like there were little insects crawling in her hair, like they were biting her scalp. She suddenly shivered and her fingers reached into her hair to scratch, but the more she scratched, the more itchy it became. Princess, this servant has heard that if there are lice in your hair, the best way is to burn them with a pair of tongs. Lice are afraid of heat and they will die if you burn them. One of the maids bravely said in a trembling voice. Then why didn't you say this earlier? Idiot, hurry up and get the fire tongs. Zhao Rong Junju was angry and anxious. She grabbed the servant girl and threw her out the door. The servant girl was so scared that she scrambled away. Soon, the servant girl took a pair of scalding tongs from the kitchen and walked in, trembling with fear. Your Highness, I just heard that fire tongs can burn lice to death, but I don't know how to use it. Princess, this servant has heard that the tongs can burn lice to death, but this servant doesn't know how to use them, one of the maids said in fear. This servant has seen my mother use them, but this servant has never used them before. Chapter 12:19. The servant girl could only gather her courage and use the fire tongs to pull down Zhao Rong Juanju's hair. After a short while, everyone's noses smelled a burning smell, like something had been burnt. Zhao Rong Junju furrowed her brows and said unhappily, "Where is this stench coming from?" Suddenly, a servant girl pointed at Zhao Rong Juanju's hair and cried out in alarm. Not good. Not good. Her Highness' hair is on fire. Hearing this, Zhao Rong Junju and the servant girl with the fire tongs jumped in fright. It turned out that the fire tongs had been too hot and had burned the ends of Zhao Rong Juanju's hair. The servant girls saw the fire burning from the ends of her hair and cried out in unison. Zhao Rong Junju felt a burning sensation on her neck. She was furious and raised her hand to strike the servant girl with the fire tongs. She used all her strength in this strike. With a crack, the servant girl's ribs broke and her body flew backwards. She spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. She didn't move and it was unknown whether she was dead or alive. The servant girls didn't have time to see if the servant girl was dead or alive. They were all trying to help Zhao Rong Junju put out the fire. Some people used fans to fan her while others used clothes to cover her. Zhao Rong Junju was in a sorry state, but the fire grew larger and larger. It continued to spread upwards and the burning smell became stronger and stronger. Finally, a servant girl was clever and rushed out with a basin of water. She threw the water at Zhao Rongjunju's head. The fire was finally extinguished. But the long hair that Zhao Rongjunju was so proud of had been burned into a mess. It used to look like a glossy black satin, but now this satin had become a piece of torn cloth. The air was filled with the stench of something burning. Zhao Rongjunju's hair was wet and dripping water. Her body was covered in burnt hair. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at the polished bronze mirror. She couldn't believe that the person in the mirror that looked like a bald pheasant was herself. Ah! She gave a shrill and angry scream. She grabbed the mirror and smashed it on the ground. This ugly freak isn't me. It's not me. How can I have the face to see Cousin Emperor after becoming like this? You will definitely despise my face and my hair. I don't have the face to see Cousin anymore. Zhao Rongjunju broke down and screamed. She grabbed things in the room and started to beat people. The servant girls were all kneeling in fear and let her beat them. No one dared to dodge. Junju, who made you unhappy? Just as Zhao Rongjunju was about to go crazy with anger, a low and pleasant male voice suddenly rang out from the door of the room. As soon as she heard this voice, Zhao Rongjunju, who had been smashing things with all her might, froze as if her pressure points had been sealed. She was holding a vase in her hand. Chapter 12:20. When Zhao Rong Region Princess saw the red-clothed man, she couldn't help but show a glimmer of joy. She threw the vase in her hand to the ground and walked over to the man, ignoring her disheveled appearance. You finally came. Did you finish what you promised me? You're here for the other half of the reward, aren't you? Her eyes shone with excitement. The red-clothed man shook his head and slowly said, No. You still haven't finished? Zhao Rong Region Princess revealed a disappointed expression. She wanted to get angry, but for some reason she cowered under the gaze of the red-clothed man. She swallowed back the curses that were on the tip of her tongue. If you haven't finished, why are you here? She grumbled, suppressing her anger. Ha! The red-clothed man let out a light laugh. His voice was moving and his laugh was even more moving. Half of the maids blushed because of his laughter. Their hearts beat wildly and their faces were slightly hot. I happened to pass by and heard your voice. I wanted to come in and see you. Diske Princess, how did your hair become like this? The red-clothed man spoke to Zhao Rong Region Princess without any hint of respect. His words were very bold and made it seem like he was very intimate with Zhao Rong Region Princess. When the servant girls heard this, they couldn't help but think, could this man be the princess lover? The red-clothed man's gaze swept across the faces of the servant girls. His smile deepened. He was magnificent and beautiful. The servant girls couldn't help but stare at him. Zhao Rong Region Princess suppressed the anger in her chest and huffed. You came at the right time. I have a new business for you. The smile on the red-clothed man's face disappeared. His entire body emitted a murderous aura. The servant girls were forced by his aura and couldn't help but tremble. However, the murderous aura on the red-clothed man disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Then he smiled as if nothing had happened. His gaze drifted across the faces of the servant girls. You told my secret in front of these servant girls. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Zhao Rong Region Princess said unconcernedly, a group of servant girls that are dumber than pigs. Do whatever you want. The red-clothed man laughed. If that's the case, then I won't be polite. The two of them exchanged questions and answers. The servant girls were stunned. They didn't think that they had unknowingly encountered a disaster. Before the red-clothed man's smile faded, his sleeve suddenly flew out. A faint red mist spread through the air and enveloped the servant girls like a beautiful cloud. So fragrant. So beautiful. The maids had intoxicated expressions on their faces. One by one they stood up involuntarily and began to dance. They laughed and danced around the man in red. Suddenly they fell to the ground like wooden stakes, and the air began to emit white mist. When the white mist dissipated, there were only a few pieces of clothing, shoes, socks, hairpins and other items left on the ground. There was also a pool of thick blood. The maids had all disappeared. Zhao Rong of the princess couldn't help but rub her eyes at this strange scene. Zhao. Why are they all gone? She couldn't help but cry out. The man in red slowly walked into the room, and the two doors closed on their own behind him. Then how terrifying would the truly powerful thing be? However, the stronger he was, the more advantageous it would be for her, right? Zhao Rongjunju reacted and opened her mouth, revealing a sweet and moving smile. Young Master Thousand Faces is so powerful. I really didn't find the wrong person. I believe that you will definitely be able to successfully complete my task. I will wait for the good news in the manor, she said with a smile. She subtly asked him to leave, thinking that it would be better to get rid of this god of plague in front of her as soon as possible. Chapter 12:22. The people in the Purple Cloud Pavilion were truly evil. They were exactly the same as the rumor said. Just by looking at the way they dealt with the servant girls, it was enough to make people tremble. Xiaorong Princess was already beginning to regret. After completing this transaction, she never wanted to see anyone from the Purple Cloud Pavilion ever again. Oh. The red-clothed young master raised his eyebrows. Does the princess want to kick me out? His words exposed Xiaorong Juanju's thoughts, causing her to feel both embarrassed and afraid. Of course not. It's just that it's getting late and I want to rest. It's not convenient for a woman to be alone, so... She stammered and stammered. Her expression was even more flustered. She was completely different from her usual arrogant self. Ha, the princess is truly interesting. What you think in your heart, you won't admit it. However, I won't argue with you. You just said that you have a new business deal? I'm very interested. Princess, why don't you tell me about it? The red-clothed young master chuckled. Not only did he not leave, he sat down on the chair with a relaxed expression. Hearing this, Xiaorong Princess couldn't help but curse herself for being too cowardly. She was so scared that she even forgot about her revenge. She put away her smile and sat down across from the red-clothed young master. Word by word she said, I want to kill someone. Oh. The red-clothed young master asked without any surprise. She is a woman. Also she should be with the emperor. Xiaorong Princess thought of Ning. Her hands clenched into fists and her eyes revealed a deep hatred. Another woman of the emperor? The red-clothed young master raised his eyebrows. That's right. Xiaorong Princess slammed the table in anger. She told the story of how she and Ning became enemies, how she was tricked into boarding the carriage, and how she was humiliated at the floor of Taihe today. After she finished, she said, I don't know who she is, but I want her life. I believe that with the thousand-faced young master's ability, finding her whereabouts is as easy as flipping his hand. How about it, do you accept this business deal? Purple Cloud Pavilion has never rejected a business that comes to us. Of course I will accept it. As for the reward, I won't accept silver this time. The red-clothed young master smiled. You won't accept silver? Then what do you want? As long as you say it, as long as it exists in this world, there is nothing I can't give you. Xiaorong Princess said heroically. This gentleman wants. The red-clothed gentleman dragged out his words. His demonic phoenix eyes looked over Xiaorong Juanju's face and body with ill intentions. Xiaorong Princess couldn't help but blush. She avoided his gaze and shook her head. No, I already have someone in my heart. I will never devote myself to you. With a chi sound, the red-clothed man laughed. His gaze toward Xiaorong Princess carried a hint of disdain. Do you think this young master has taken a fancy to you? Your Highness, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Xiaorong Juanju's face turned red again, and her anger rose again. She wanted to glare at him, but she didn't dare and could only suppress her anger. Then may I ask what reward young Master Thousand Faces wants? The red-clothed young master's long phoenix eyes moved over Xiaorong Juanju's face. He slowly said, I want a promise from your father, Duke Ning.